If you also stand for free speech, you can go to tfrlive.com/signup and sign up for a TFR supporter pass and help us in our mission to keep the airwaves uncensored and unregulated. TFR Live, your uncensored and unregulated protection from deception.
The Kavanaugh nomination, the Russia probe. I'm Ann Cates. The Senate Judiciary Committee has scheduled a hearing for next Monday to hear testimony from U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the woman who made allegations of sexual misconduct. Correspondent Manu Raja reports the decision was made late today.
A Republican senator told reporters that there would be a public opportunity to question both Judge Brett Kavanaugh and his accuser, Christine Ford, who, of course, accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault when they were both in high school, something that Brett Kavanaugh has denied.
The president has ordered the declassification of documents and texts linked to the investigation into Russian meddling in the election and any Trump campaign ties to the Kremlin. Correspondent Evan Perez.
A lot of this has to do with the underlying explanation from the FBI as to why they believe that Carter Page was acting as an agent of a foreign power, in this case, Russia. So that's what the president is going after here. That's what his allies have been selectively leaking some of this stuff.
Congressman Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, says the president is interfering with an active probe by selectively releasing materials. Florence is heading away from the Carolinas, leaving behind massive flooding. Meteorologist Jennifer Gray says the worst may be yet to come.
Flooding occurs days after the storm has passed, and that's because this is river flooding. There are 20 rivers in major flood stage, 22 in moderate, and so when all of that water now tries to drain out, it's draining into these rivers and tributaries. It's overfilling their banks, and that's what's causing all of this incredible flooding.
Hundreds of highways in North Carolina are closed, with the death toll from Florence at 31. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 93 points, the S&P off 16, the Nasdaq down 114. I'm Ann Cates.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Astronauts to the moon.
Ten, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Not to get off track here, but I feel like we're in the Truman Show, and we're in a snow globe, and they just shook it up.
Welcome to reality.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages. You are tuned into your protection from deception. That's right here at truthfrequencyradio.com. And stop, drop, and roll. You are being engulfed by the inferno that is the #1 show on TFR on Monday nights between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 to midnight Eastern. That show is Jeranism Monday Night Raw, and it starts now. I'm your host, Jeran from Jeranism, and I thank you for joining me this evening. It is very much appreciated. Hello to, well, those upside down in Australia or New Zealand, where they stand at the beach next to the level water. Of course, all water is level, so those perpendicular wherever you might be in Hawaii or possibly Mozambique, who also stand at the shore and stare at level oceans around them, the same level as the people up right here in Santa Cruz. Of course, to them, I'm perpendicular, and that's where the magic of science steps in to explain our reality. You see, we kind of have people upside down, but to each other's perspective, they are right side up, and others are upside down and perpendicular. And while this is some amazing word salad and takes a certain amount of tremendous mental gymnastics to reach that conclusion, this is, in fact, our reality, we're told. So tonight, we hope to discuss this particular strange fact of our reality and the reasons why, when you even mention that you're questioning this sort of idea or these where we live, these peculiar aspects of our reality, why the public at large turns against you in anger and vitriol, because we've known for thousands of years, of course, that the earth is a sphere. Even though we point out some of the absurdities of these claims, we are considered the uneducated, the idiotic, the moronic, and all the other derogatory terms you can possibly think of. So, hello to everyone in the chat, wherever you might be. Welcome and hello. Tonight's show will be in two sections, really, the two halves, if you will. So let me set those up, and then I will be taking phone calls during both halves. The first half, from now until 7:30 Pacific, that's 10:30 Eastern, will be a call-in for anyone who can answer a few questions for me in regards to the shape of the earth. So if you have answers or comments to any of those issues, you can call. The phone number is 213-233-3998, 213-233-3998. I see we have somebody in the chat who's down under, so hopefully no headaches going on over there. So I guess you guys can hear me okay. Now I see there's an error on the screen. A network connection error occurred. I don't know what that means, but hopefully we can still take calls. Go ahead and get in line, 213-233-3998. I'm more looking for Globers for this first half. In the second half of the show, we will get a little more raw, and that's when it's time to put the kiddies to sleep. I will be asking the audience to call in. Tonight, I want to know or hear some suggestions or some stories in regards to the question of forgiveness. Now, I never ask for advice, nor do I ever give advice, because I think that that puts somebody in a situation where they feel like they know all the answers, and I don't feel like I know all the answers, and I don't think anybody out there knows all the answers. So I like the idea of suggestions, comments, maybe past life experience, not past life, but experiences in your past. Maybe moments where you forgave somebody and it turned out not to be the right idea. Or do you know any stories of forgiveness? Do you know of infidelity possibly in a relationship to where somebody was forgiven and that relationship went on to thrive for 20, 30 years after that? Or do you have only examples of infidelity to where it was forgiven, but then 2 years later, same thing happened, something like that? So it may be a bit more oriented towards the adults and hence raw. So if you'd like to give me a call to talk about any of that, go ahead and call 213-233-3998. But again, that will be at 7:30 p.m. Get in line to discuss that topic. But from now until 7:30, we will instead be discussing some major issues with the globe model. And I would love to hear the answer to these questions. So first, I wanted to mention, if you have time on Thursday evening, probably starting around 4 or 5 o'clock, and if you live near the Monterey Bay in California, we're going to be doing a little test over there. I will be in Pacific Grove, and I have someone who will be in Aptos and 25 miles away. I will be 40 feet above the sea level, and he will be 15 feet above the sea level. And with refraction assumed, we're taking that 7.6R into the equation, so we're erring on the side of the globe. That calls for 360 feet of drop and for 135 feet hidden due to the curve of the Earth. I will be using a borrowed P900 that has been modified to be a IR camera, meaning it shoots in the infrared. I will be looking across to the other side where they will be signaling me with a mirror as the sun sets behind my head. The IR camera has been shown, if you've seen any of the great videos that are starting to come out, to significantly cut through any of the haze or the atmospheric effects that happen above water, which is the reason a lot of flat earthers believe that some things occasionally are blocked. And the mirror also eliminates the Glober objection to the many, many laser tests that have already showed the water is level. So that Glober response to the issue of these lasers going across the water, and I understand it. I don't agree, but I understand that the laser we think we are seeing from the other side, according to them, is actually the point where the laser peaks over the hump or the curve of the Earth. Now, again, this argument is a coherent one. It makes sense to me. I understand what they're saying. Again, I don't agree. But the mirror actually removes this possibility, because if I'm able to see the mirror signals, which is the reflection of the sun, then I'm seeing the source of the reflection, which is at the mirror. So that should be behind 135 feet of Earth curve, which is the height of a 10-story building, or about, half the height of the entire Statue of Liberty, ground to the top of the torch, or about the height of the actual statue itself. I think is about 150 feet to torch. So this eliminates the argument from Globers as clearly a mere signaling device must have line of sight to be seen. It cannot be that I'm seeing the reflection miles away where it is peeking over any kind of curve or hump. You wouldn't see the reflection from that point. You could just do a little bit of research, and that will show you that the benefits of the heliograph system that was used throughout World War I, World War II, and the benefit is the fact that in order to be interrupted, or rather in order to be intercepted, these signals being sent from station to station, the only way to do so would be to be directly in line with the observer and the signaler. Well, I will be behind a curve, or the signaling device will be behind a curve, in which case there is no direct line of sight. So we should not see any flashes from that mirror. Again, this is doing the kind of experiment that we don't see from Globers, where you go out and try and disprove your model rather than to go out and just keep repeating the same things that people have said for years. Without an open mind, you are completely biased in your tests. So this test kind of allows both things to happen. We'll see which one is more likely to show reality. So if I see the flash of the reflection, then obviously there's no curve of the earth blocking me. And if you'd like to join, you can comment on my recent Facebook post. And I'm going to be kind of looking at that after the show and tomorrow and kind of starting to get that in order. Again, that's for Thursday evening around 5 or 6. We don't want the sun too low because it'd be better if it was a little higher. We don't want it at noon either, so we want it a little bit later so that that person on the beach in Aptos can be signaling me with a mirror. And then he'll also have a compass, and he will have a camera so that if we do start seeing the flashes, then we can go ahead and record what's going on here. So here's the answers I'm looking for in regard to this place that we live. There's 3 of them today. One is the Coriolis effect. Many people that are globe believers might think they have a clear understanding of the Coriolis effect, so I'm going to challenge that. Second one would be gas pressure without a container. Again, this is something that is assumed in the heliocentric model, that we are on the Earth with gas pressure, yet next to a vacuum with no container, an open system. Third will be anybody's answers in regard to the Stephen Hawking show, Genius. I'll quickly explain each going backward. First, if you listened last week or to Globebusters yesterday, then you saw or heard the many issues with the show Genius. You saw the numerous lies, and actually it's more than that. It's total fabrications pointed out that are irrefutable. So excuse me. Number one being the calling of the participants. Sorry, I need something to drink. 1 second. All right, I'm back. I feel better now. Number one being the calling of the participants. Ordinary people is what they call them. So when you're given a teacher, a scientist, and a NASA Goddard employee, that wouldn't necessarily call those ordinary people. Now, many people might object and say, but Jeran, they are ordinary people. They just happen to work as a teacher, a scientist, and a NASA employee. Of course, my argument to that would be, if Coke had or if we were going to have a Coke versus Pepsi challenge to see which one tasted best, and the 3 judges happened to be somebody who worked in Coke, somebody who worked in the general office of Coke, and somebody who drove a Coke truck. Well, ordinary people, they are ordinary people. They just happen to be working for the very company that is involved in the test. So that wouldn't be a very good judging crew to have, these 3 Coke employees, but they're just ordinary people. No, same thing with this particular show, Genius. They took 3 people, and that's not the only issue. It wouldn't be a problem if you said, hey, we have this teacher and this scientist and this scientist. That's not what happened. What happened is they told us it was 3 ordinary people, and then one of the scientists says, and I quote, I'm not a scientist, blankety, blankety, blue. When a year earlier in a video, she clearly says she is a scientist. So that's a problem. That is flat out fabrication. It's a flat out lie. And she is a scientist. And they didn't mention the other 2's jobs. We had to actually look that up and find out that one of them works for NASA Goddard as a visualization expert, and the other one is a physical education teacher. But we also pointed out yesterday several issues, including the duplication of footage, the faking of certain parts of the tests, the altimeter corrections, and the helicopter being the wrong direction, proving complete and total fabrication of scientific evidence. And if that doesn't bother you, because you're a glober and you say the Earth couldn't possibly be flat, well, just let people continue to fabricate scientific evidence and pass that off as being the reason that we believe what we believe. And if you think that's a good way to go about things, I disagree. The number 2 thing was gas pressure without a container. As we know, we are breathing, as we speak, gas pressure, right? A mixture of oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, and mostly nitrogen. So without a container, how do we have gas pressure? Please help me with this one. Call in and explain that to me. Gas pressure without a container. And many people will maybe call in and say, oh, well, we've got this thing called gravity that's holding the gases down to the earth, which cannot be true because the gases are a consistent mix of whatever it is. I don't know offhand, 78% nitrogen and blah, 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 blah. But there are different weights of these different gases. So if gravity was, as we're told, then you would have oxygen on the bottom, followed by argon, followed by nitrogen, followed by, and actually you would have at the bottom ozone, which is the heaviest, and yet ozone is at the top. So we got a problem here with the idea of gas pressure without a container. You know, you've got a tire on your bike or on your car that's filled with gas pressure, but it's contained in the rubber outside tire. So if you remove the rubber outside tire, what happens to the gas pressure in the tire? Well, it no longer exists, and it goes out into the lesser pressure area, which is out here. Now, if we are on an Earth, a ball Earth with gas pressure, and there is no container to contain us, then the gas pressure would escape into space. It would have no reason not to. It goes to the lower pressure system, which is supposedly all around us. I, however, disagree. And then back to number 1, please help me with the Coriolis effect, something that we've all fallen for, that it's another one of those falling victims to the words of men, because if you really start thinking about it, let's put it in perspective here. The Coriolis force, okay, which is the apparent deflection of certain items in certain directions based on the hemisphere that you're in, so on and so forth. But the bigger problem that I have with it is if you are a globe believer, and let's listen carefully because I want you to explain this to me when you call in. If you're a globe believer, then you have to believe that the Earth is spinning. Okay, that's number 1. Now, we don't feel it. Okay, I got that. They say we only feel acceleration. Okay, which you would feel then if you were flying from, say, I don't know, somewhere north to somewhere south. You would be gaining, well, that's if you're in the northern hemisphere. You would be gaining speed as you start off in, say, Alaska, going 400 miles per hour. By the time you get to the equator, you'd be moving at 1,040 miles per hour. It's a pretty significant acceleration. However, nobody in the history of the world has ever gotten off the plane in Ecuador and fallen over because of the vast differences in the speed of the spin versus Alaska to Ecuador. Now, bigger problem than that still. So you have to believe that the air, okay, so the entire air that makes up our atmosphere, they say it goes about 60 miles high or something like that, whatever it is, 100 miles I've heard. But this group of air that's above us is moving lockstep with the spinning Earth, okay? Now, not just the air, which somebody might say, well, gravity is pulling down the air and the Earth's moving and it's gravity. Okay, whatever. Here's the thing. Not only is it moving lockstep with the Earth, but if you put, say, a helicopter into the sky, so you have a helicopter take off the ground, now it's hovering 100 feet, 200 feet in the air, and the Earth continues to spin, does it spin underneath him and the helicopter stay there? No. The helicopter, the multi-thousand-pound metal device, is also moved along with the spinning Earth. Now, I can understand why you think flat Earth is dumb. I can understand why you think it's idiotic and moronic because we were taught it. But if the problem becomes that to believe what we were taught requires the suspension of anything that we've ever seen or anything that makes any sense, then you need to look at it. And if you're afraid to look at it, it is simply a testament to your cojones. Okay, for those of you who speak Espanol. It is a testament to your huevos. Okay? It means that you're afraid of going against status quo. That you don't want your fellow employees, your bosses, your friends, your family to look at you like you're crazy. And to me, truth is more important, you know, not how people look at me. And we'll get into a funny story, speaking of that, at around 7:30 when we get raw. But really, you need to think about what this entails, because now when you picture the Earth spinning as a ball, as we've been told, and it's spinning towards the east, okay? So if you have a plane taking off in New York and flying to California, obviously that plane should be much faster than from California to New York, because as you're flying from New York to California, the Earth is spinning towards you. And as you're flying from California to New York, well, technically, if you really want to get technical, should be impossible. At 1,040 miles per hour, the plane can't possibly keep up. Therefore, you should be falling backwards as the Earth spins away from you. But we know that's not what they believe. So let's scratch that, because that's not what the belief is of the heliocentric model. The belief is that as the Earth spins to the east, that all of the atmosphere around us is moving with it. Now that I might have some sort of thought processes, okay, maybe that could exist, but not when you start placing items into that air. Not when you place a airplane or a helicopter and say, oh, now they're all moving. Well, by what force? Gravity is holding the airplane in the air and moving it with it. Doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't it pull it to the ground? It just doesn't make any sense. So what you have to believe is that everything's being carried with the spinning Earth. Now, here's where the Coriolis force comes into this. If that is true, if you believe that everything is moving with the Earth as it spins, then there is no Coriolis force. It makes no sense. Why would there possibly be any Coriolis force? Because everything's moving together. It's all moving as one. Why would there be a deflection due to the spin of the Earth? Doesn't make sense. So you need to call in and explain how exactly that all works in the globe model. I would love to take your calls. I don't know if the phones are working or if maybe nobody's calling in. Let me see. I'm going to try this retry now button. Don't know what that does. Wonder why I'm not. I don't know if anybody's tried to call. I just have a network connection error problem. Don't know what that means. Let's see here if we can fix this. Sorry about that. I want to see if we can figure out why the phone lines aren't working. Let me try this. And did that work? Let's try a refresh. How about that? So if you've called in and you have gotten some sort of answer, looks like it's gone now. There's no network error. So maybe it's available now. Go ahead and give me a call, 213-233-3998. 213-233-3998. I'll read the chat until I see any calls come in, see if anybody's got any answers for me. Hey, thanks. Hey, Bob's in the chat. Hey, Bob, how are you? Let's see here if we can find anybody with any answers. My teenager knows all the answers. Does he? I need to know them all. Let's see. Jeran, you can forgive Miss Siba. That doesn't mean you have to take her back. That's what the second half of the show will be about. I'm just looking for stories, suggestions. I've always been somebody who, like I said before, I love to listen to people talk about whatever. So if you have stories, if you have past life, I keep saying past life. If you have stuff that's happened in your past, then I would just love to hear that. It helps you create a better choices for yourself. That's how we can live and learn. Sometimes you have to make the mistake yourself to learn, but other times just listening to others can kind of help propel you in the right direction. Let's go to our first caller. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from?
Hey, Jeran. It's Brian from Niagara Falls.
What's up? How's it going?
How you doing?
Good.
Pretty well, thanks. So your phones are working?
They are now.
I
think
wanted to let you know that.
Thank you very much. Are you simulcasting tonight?
Yep. We're on. We got a great crew.
Awesome. Hello to the pushers. I know you weren't there last week. Everybody was really upset.
Yeah, I was upset too. I had to work an overnight. So, unfortunately I couldn't do it. But I think the Globers are afraid to answer your questions because
that's what it appears like.
You have great questions that.
Well, that's kind of the whole point.
Sorry?
No, I was just saying that's kind of the whole point of everything is that if these things are true, then they will be true no matter how we question them or whatever. And so we're noticing a trend of these things like the Stephen Hawking show Genius, to where there's clear fabrications, clear lies, and that's not the way you teach science. So for me, the more and more every day, I'm seeing signs that something is up, and the only kind of refuting that we get from Globers is the name calling. Is the right before I came on the air, there was somebody in the chat, I won't say his name, but he just kind of said, I don't do flat Earth, so I'm leaving. And it's like, okay, I don't do flat Earth, but obviously if the person's listening to Truth Frequency Radio, I'm assuming that they do truth. So, that's a problem when we've got truthers that have drawn the line in the sand somewhere and said, I'm looking for the truth, but I don't do that, which to me is foolish. I mean, we should be trying to put flat Earth to bed. if it's not got any merit. Should be over, right?
Oh, it's like the David Weiss T-shirt. I became a flat earther because I tried to disprove it.
Right.
Like,
Yep. So we all did it. When I first
there's
AE map and said, I'm going to disprove this, and I went looking for north-south circumnavigation. And that's pretty much where it all ended for me.
But yeah, I thought it was the stupidest thing ever when I first heard about it. And I figured I'd knock it out in a weekend.
And it makes sense.
But the more I looked into it.
And that's another thing, right, is that we were taught it's the stupidest thing ever. Nobody knew any of the arguments. Nobody knew about, other than, oh, you'll fall off the edge. You know, of course, that was the beginning argument. But, you know, you have to ask yourself, why weren't we taught the curvature formula in school? Why weren't we given practical examples and ways to go out and test it, or a week where you had to argue flat versus round? These are the things that would happen in reality if it was really a globe. They would have no problem with people questioning those things and testing those things. And, you know, that's how you teach. That's how children get a good idea of the world around them, is practical examples, actual physical testing. None of that stuff happened in any school I've ever known.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So anything else?
Yeah, it's just shout out to the rest of the Bushwhackers. Love you all. And thanks for keep on going live, Jeran. Like, I love it every Monday, and I'll try to keep on doing the simulcast if I can. But
well, I appreciate
it. And I was kind of holding off till the last half because all your arguments I'm right behind you on. So, are you live streaming your experiments on Thursday?
I'm not sure. I mean, usually we want to make sure everything's set up right and everything, because when I've done that in the past and then something doesn't go right, then everybody gives me a hard time about why did I do that. So, you know, if everything is set up right and we're having a good test and it's good weather and it's people are in the right places, then yes, I will.
Fair enough. Awesome.
Have you seen some of that?
I'm sure things will go.
Have you seen any of that? Have you seen any of that IR footage yet?
No, I have not. My computer's been off for almost a week.
Oh yeah,
so I'm a little out of the game.
Yeah, really unbelievable.
But awesome.
All right,
all right, man. Well, I hope the phone lines are blowing up for you, because they're working, guys. Call in.
Doesn't appear so. I got one other call after you. We'll go to that one now. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from?
Hi there.
Hello there.
Are you there?
I am.
Hi, this is your meatballer caller.
All right, my favorite caller. So
I'm
hoping you'd call.
I'm your global guy that you can bounce things off me. Okay. Anyway, you're talking about I've been thinking about some of the things that you've proposed before. But before we get into that, before you go out and to do your test, if you could go to there's a YouTube video. It's called Refraction: How to Bend a Laser Beam, and it's put out by AstroCamp. That's the people that published it. And it's a 15-second video. So if you just watch that, just so you can get something that they've actually done, and I guess a number of people have done this, but this one's a real short one, showing how a laser beam can be diffracted, can be bent.
I've seen it.
So you were talking about. Go ahead.
I said I've seen it, and that wasn't one of the questions for tonight. Yes. Oops. Stay on the line. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, guys. You're listening to Jeranism.
All right.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Gio, founder of Truth Frequency Radio and host of Beyond the Veil. The mainstream media and establishment are running scared right now, and they've prominently featured TruthFrequencyRadio.com as number 89 on the federal government's hit list, also known as the fake news list, which is essentially a list of sites slated for censorship on Facebook, YouTube, Google, and other social media. Now is the time for you to get involved. Share your favorite TFR shows far and wide on forums and social media. Tell your friends and family about your favorite shows. If you're a business owner, get in touch with us to feature your product or service right here on TFR. And if you haven't done so already, become a TFR supporter now and get unlimited commercial-free downloads in high quality.
Visit truthfrequencyradio.com/sign-up.
Thank you for making TFR the leader in independent and uncensored talk radio. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection
From deception.
My name is David. I suffered from MS or multiple sclerosis symptoms since 1986. For years, doctors tried to help, but didn't give me any real hope. I tried almost everything. I was afraid this was my future, but I did not give up hope. 8 years ago, a healthcare worker told me about Regenistem. I called Regenistem. Regenistem explained how stem cells worked. No promises, just a simple explanation of the science. They treated me with respect and understood my journey. For the first time, I felt hope. Now I can jog and snow ski once again. It's been amazing. I have been symptom-free of multiple sclerosis for 8 years. I have learned that stem cell therapy has a broad range of medical therapy from COPD to chronic pain and diabetic neuropathy. It's an amazing therapy. If you want to talk about your chronic pain or your chronic symptoms, call Regenistem today.
Call 305-224-1858. That's 305-224-1858. 305-224-1858.
I bring you a message. A message few of you will be able to believe. A message I alone was able to read in the fires of the universe. I also bring you the means with which to save yourselves.
What are you selling, Mr. Snake Oil?
Bring your friends here.
My name's Jimmy, and every Friday and Saturday night, right here on True Frequency Radio at midnight Pacific, straight out of Santa Cruz, California, I'm cooking up a fresh edition of Into the Microcosm. It's not just a show, ladies and gentlemen. It's an adventure. Every Friday and Saturday night. Your number one alternative to the alternative and the underground. www.tfrlive.com. Good times ahead. See you there.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
No hate, no hype, no fear. Real people, real radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Before the break, we were talking to my favorite Glober, who was explaining refraction of a laser beam. I'm a little bit confused as to which video. Well, I went and looked for it, and I think he's talking about this 15-second video where they're shooting a laser through water that has been heavily saturated with salt, I believe, or some sort of substance at the bottom, which creates a change in the medium in which then you can bend a laser beam. So I'm guessing that he's stating that all these tests that are showing lasers going across vast bodies of water, that the medium is changing so much in the air that is causing the laser to always bend around the curvature. Now, why that also causes mountains to rise up and display themselves at the horizon, or why it causes buildings in Chicago to rise up and display themselves at the horizon, why we can see too far, is the question I have for him. But we had other questions as well, so let me bring him back on. Okay, you're back. And is that the video you're talking about when they're shooting it through a water tank?
Yeah, it's the water, and then they put sugar in there. And at the bottom, the sugar is more thick, and then as it gets up towards the top, it's more dilute. So it's more dilute water at the top.
Gotcha.
Just like if you ever have a Coke and leave ice in there, then you see all the syrup down at the bottom, and you see it. So it's kind of a gradient. It gets lesser and lesser and lesser. Anyway, let me say something about that we both agree with. That was it. That thing with the helicopter and shining the laser beam and all that,
right?
I would agree with you. It's probably very bogus. My guess is they wrote a script. They already knew what the shots they wanted, and they filmed it to get the shots. That's my guess.
And I would agree with you. I think that's what they did.
So
okay.
Okay.
I think the problem I have is that when you're talking about science, that these are the things that are not good for science, is to show fabrications and to have lies in your program. Because if there's people out there who have been taught that science is on the up and up, and that there's peer review, and we don't ever take shortcuts, and that we are very thorough in all of our tests and examinations, and then we see stuff like that when it's your opportunity to present scientific evidence to a vast population when you're doing something on PBS, then it is in your best interest to make sure that you hit all those points and not show another side of science that calls into question your integrity.
I totally agree with you. I mean, put that on a MacGyver show or something like that.
I agree.
And then say this is fiction. This is not. We're not doing this for real.
Right, and put up a little.
Okay. The other thing is
actual scientific data if you're going to do something and call it science. So, do you have anything for the other two, Coriolis and atmospheric pressure?
Yeah, I do. But before that, I just like to say I've listened to some of the recordings where you've done a debate with people, and they're like calling you liar and all that. You actually have seen things at a distance, and they saying no, you're lying and all that. And they don't have. I can see that they're the ones that haven't looked and seen videos where people have actually seen things at a distance. So they are actually the ones that are saying things that they don't know to be true. You've seen it. I've seen some of those videos that you can say, oh yeah, it's a possibility. Yeah, I could see that, and then just to call somebody a liar.
Right.
I think that's ridiculous.
I appreciate that. The one thing I'm not doing is I'm not lying, and that's the one thing I'm not doing. If you want to call me stupid or you want to say I don't understand, then that I can't really argue with you. I'd say, okay, maybe I don't understand. Maybe I'm just overlooking something. Right. But as far as lying, that's where, then I stopped listening to those channels because they got that wrong.
A lot of those guys seems like, especially, I don't know what the guy's name is, but one guy, it just seems like he wants to be in an argument rather than have a discussion.
Right.
But anyway, okay. Now, as far as the sugar water and the laser, this is related to the atmosphere in this fashion. Okay, so if you go up to the mountains, let's say 8,000 feet, the air, I don't know, do we agree that the air is thinner up there or not?
Yes.
Or you don't think it is?
There's a less amount of it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's your explanation for it being less there? Do you have an explanation for that or no?
As far as it being you mean that there's less air? Well, it appears that things that, to me at least, it appears that things that weigh more than the air around them fall down, and things that weigh less go up. So when you're talking about air, that since the molecules of it that would have a higher density kind of assemble at the bottom, and then it would thin out as it goes up.
Okay. Well, they're still able to breathe up there, though, right? But right. It's more difficult. Right. So they're getting some oxygen up there when you're breathing. Or like when people go training for long distance running and things like that, they'll go up to a higher altitude so that their body will be better at handling oxygen. And also when they come back down to a lower level, they're able to.
That's why I'm asking, because I don't know what the mechanism is that causes basically air to be this perfect mixture of these three elements or four elements. I know they say there's a bunch of trace gases as well, but because that same mixture is in my lungs, correct?
Yeah, I think you're cutting out a little bit. I can't hear exactly what you're saying, but so we do have some mixture going on. And my guess is that if everything was just settled down and there were no breezes and there were no actions on anything, if there was no heating of things, if there was no cooling of things, at some point I'm guessing that everything would be somewhat layered in some fashion, but there would still be molecular bonds between things, right? It's like with water, you have hydrogen and oxygen are connected together, so they become very heavy. And the same thing is that when you get to sea level, and if you go down below sea level, you get more and more pressure. So, do we agree with that also?
Yes, because of the weight of the water on top of you, right?
Right, but just and beside you in all directions. It's just like if you ever go swimming and you go down, dive down 8 feet or 10 feet, you can just feel the pressure of everything on every side of you.
Correct.
Okay, so now here's how it relates to this laser thing with the sugar water in the tank. Okay, so at the top, this sugar water is more dilute, and so that is the way that beam goes on there. It's not just one solid blocks of sugar water. It's more dilute, more dilute, more dilute. The same way that in the atmosphere, the pressure at a higher level is less pressure, and when you get down to sea level, it's more pressure. And when you go to the Salton Sea, you're going below sea level, so that's even more pressure. So you're getting this very gradient, just little by little. Every fraction of an inch, more and more and more and more. The higher you go, the little bit less pressure. And so it's like a huge.
Right. So doesn't high pressure low pressure?
Lens. Excuse me?
Doesn't high pressure always escape to low pressure?
No, obviously. Well, let's look at the evidence. We go up to a mountain and there's low pressure up there. Right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's just the evidence that we see. We go up to higher levels and there's low pressure. We come down to sea level and you get the sea level pressure.
What I'm saying is that so if you open up the valve of a tire, why does the air release?
Wherever you're at, if you're at sea level, then the pressure inside the tire is more than where you're at.
Okay, so it'll
equalize.
But it goes from high pressure to low pressure until it equalizes. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
right?
let's say you go up to wherever you're at. Yeah, if you're at sea level and you let the pressure out of the tire, it'll equalize to wherever you're at. Yeah. But if you took that tire up to, or let's say a balloon, because you can see it easier. So if you take a balloon, and I know they do this, and I'm just thinking just now that I know they do these kind of things in science labs for students. Maybe not everywhere, but you take a balloon up. Let's say you fill up a balloon up in the mountains, high in the mountains, and it's a well-filled balloon, and then you bring it down to sea level, and that balloon is going to be collapsed because of the higher pressure.
Right.
Or if you take a balloon and fill it up at sea level and take it up in the mountains, it might explode. And I think that's kind of the way that I think that's how some of the atmospheric balloons that they put up
right. Okay. So with
instruments for the high altitudes, they explode after they get up there.
Right. So now think of the balloon, which is a pressurized system inside of a casing, and once it gets up to a certain height, that casing bursts because the gas that's inside of it is expanding and wants to get out to the lower pressure. So why wouldn't the Earth do the exact same thing?
Equalizing with that.
Yeah, but why wouldn't the Earth do the same thing? What you're describing in one breath is one thing, and then when we apply it to the Earth, then you're changing it. For instance, if the Earth does not have...
No, I can say...
Okay, go ahead.
I can say, why does it do it? Or can we just say, well, I can see what the evidence of it is, how it is right now. For example, inside that...
If flat Earthers are saying there's a container, if they're saying that there's some sort of dome above us that is creating the atmospheric pressure. Now, we can't see said dome, and there's no evidence of said dome. But to me, I also cannot go and test space and see space and actually see that it is a real vacuum. So that's why, yeah, we can look at the evidence, but then to jump to the conclusion that means there's a vacuum of space when that can't exist next to a pressurized system, because the pressurized system would escape into the vacuum of space. How can it not?
Okay, if you took on your tire example, so inside that tire, it's going to be the same pressure everywhere. Do we agree on that? Inside that tire?
Yes.
No matter where you measure it on that tire, the pressure is going to be the same.
Correct.
Right? Okay, but that's not what we see as we're sitting on here out in the open air. We see as we go higher and higher and higher, the pressure becomes less and less and less. And even like on the highest man-made, the guy that's had a balloon and he went up real high and he had to jump out to do the highest free fall or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That he had to be in a pressurized suit where he could breathe. He had to suck oxygen because there wasn't anything up there for him to. But if he was in a like a big tire,
but that's not
that wouldn't seem to be the case.
That's not a vacuum, right? That's just less.
But it's getting closer. Yeah, but it's getting closer and closer. Just like right now at sea level, we're like at 1 atmospheric pressure, but then we go up a little bit higher, and we're at less than 1 atmospheric pressure, and we go up higher and we get less than. So it's not like this delineated one line. It's just from here, this is outer space, and below that is normal air. It's just like little by little by little by little by little gets less and less and less and less.
But if there's a point that has such low pressure that we're going to start calling it a vacuum, then anything close to it is going to escape into it, and so on and so forth all the way down the line. So I'm confused as to where.
Yeah, and,
it's like, for instance, don't we know that it's colder as we go higher? And I know that they say that eventually it starts to rise again, and I've seen that in balloon footage. But to me, it seems like as we know that what happens to superfluids like helium-3 and or liquid helium, liquid nitrogen, that are these things escaping up to the sky and becoming so cold that they are becoming this superfluid, and that's what the sky is made of. Those are the kind of questions that, and then you would have a pressurized system, but that's not what they tell us. They just tell us it's a vacuum of space, and then it's this gas pressurized system that layers on its way up till nothing. That's what you're saying, right?
I haven't. This is not something that I think about every day. So this would be my guess is that, for example, it would be less and less and less, and I'm guessing out in space there's little individual molecules floating around, just like you would have an asteroid. Can you say that asteroid, or a comet that's going through space? And I don't know if you know what your thinking is on things outside of our realm. Is that a vacuum, or is that a big solid piece of?
I would just need to see some sort of example of what we're saying here, because what you're describing doesn't exist anywhere else on this so-called planet. There is no example of a higher pressure system next to a lower pressure system where the high pressure doesn't escape, because that's what it is going to do. It's going to try and find the lower pressure system, and that can be seen anywhere.
Okay. So
you can look at, if you make a vacuum with a bottle of water, you take a bottle of water and you suck a little air out with your mouth. So now it's got a little vacuum in it, but not much. That's a lesser vacuum. That's small. And then you put it in water and poke a hole in it. It will actually lift the water out of the sink or the basin and rise it up in that bottle. And that's just a tiny little vacuum. And that's a lot of water. It's weight.
Right.
So the same vacuum is going on around us and not sucking off any of the gases, which weigh a lot less than water.
But you're talking about leaving it at one certain level on the Earth, right? Let's say you do that experiment at sea level, right? So what do we actually see in real life? If we're at sea level, we have one pressure, and if we go to 10,000 feet, we have a different pressure. So then those are side by side. There's nothing between them to keep anything flowing one way or the other. If reality says that they should all be the same and they should flow to be equalized, then we're at 10,000 feet. We should see the same pressure that we see at sea level.
And that's what my question is. So why does that not happen? That's what I'm asking.
Well, I can tell you what
you're just saying.
Yeah, and that whatever
happens. So that's
what we see.
I know
that's what we see.
I'm asking why. What is the mechanism in the heliocentric model that allows for this? Because there is no. It's basically like the people who say we know things pull to the center because the Earth is a sphere. Well, it's like no. Where's the other evidence that things pull to the center of anything? They're just you can't just say the Earth is the evidence for the Earth doing what it does. Where can you?
Well, I can.
Other things. Show me something else that pulls to the center. Gravity pulls something to the center. They just say the Earth does. That's why we're all upright and there's people upside down, but not really to them. That's their explanation for it, but their explanation is proven in and of itself. I don't know about you. When I went to school and you learned to define words, you weren't allowed to use the word in the definition. same kind of deal here. You can't define something with itself, which is what basically they're doing, or what's going on here too. That how does this work? How does this pressure work? Oh, it just works because that's what happens on Earth. It's like, okay, so show me another example of how that takes place. But I guess there isn't one. How about Coriolis force? Do you have an explanation?
I'm really, I haven't gotten into thinking about the Coriolis effect that much to be able to talk to you about it.
But you do believe then that a helicopter gets up in the air and is carried along with this atmosphere that you're talking about, that you're saying, because basically if I'm hearing you right,
believe
you're saying the atmosphere is layered.
And I can go over to all the things that you've probably gone over. Go ahead.
Just you're saying that there's this lesser
go
pressure.
ahead.
Okay, there's lesser pressure up top, and then it gets heavier down towards the ground, and that this is moving directly in line with the speed of the spinning Earth, so it's kind of moving along with it. And then a helicopter that gets up in the sky is also being moved with this collection of air. And even though the air gets lesser and lesser and lesser as it goes up, an airplane at 40,000 feet and a helicopter at 100 feet, even though one is in a much heavier pressurized air system and the other one has very little pressure, they're all moving lockstep with the spinning Earth. It doesn't even make any sense.
Well, but they're not.
They're not?
Not lockstep, because we see tornadoes and hurricanes and things like that, right? They have their own motions that they go through depending upon. They have a lot of forces, right?
I'm saying
a lot of forces are moving on air.
If you have an airplane going from New York to California, and one going from California to New York, okay, well then the one going from New York to California, since the Earth is spinning towards it, should get there much faster. It actually gets there slower. So what I'm saying is, in order to believe why they tell us that's the case, they say that it's because neither plane notices that the Earth is spinning, because they're both flying in the atmosphere that's moving along with the spinning Earth. So it's as if there is no spinning because the atmosphere is with us. So what I'm saying is, if a helicopter hovers 100 feet above the ground in this heavy, saturated, dense atmosphere, and the plane is flying at 40,000 feet in very little atmosphere, that we're to believe that there's this column between them from top to bottom that is moving along with the spinning Earth, causing neither one of them to notice that they are in this column of air. And they're moving lockstep.
Yeah. If the planet is moving at all and the air doesn't stick with it, then we would have left the planet, the atmosphere back out in space somewhere, and the Earth would be moving along with nothing around it.
That's the problem. Is
I can look at what I see as evidence. Evidence of what we see, not of.
Okay, but your evidence you're including is the fact that we're on a ball and that you believe that we're spinning. You've already made that supposition.
Well, no. Let's again. Why don't we back off and take care of one thing at a time? I see the evidence of there's a pressure at ground level, at sea level of 1 atmospheric pressure, and then we go up higher and it gets less.
Okay.
There has to be an explanation for that. And I don't think that the idea of the tire that is less reasonable, because everything would have to be the same pressure then at 10,000 feet.
Okay.
If there's a dome over something and it's all pressurized, then the pressure should be the same.
Okay.
Everywhere.
So what is
if you go up to 10,000 feet, the pressure should be the same.
Right. So explain a better.
So that's the evidence that I look at.
Okay, so what's the better explanation than the tire? You're saying the tire doesn't make sense because then you would have equal pressure all over. Okay, so we know we don't have that, so eliminate the tire. So now what we do know is we have pressure that goes from being high at the ground level to low at the top, and you're saying that the better explanation is that we're on a spinning ball that is holding these gases because of gravity in a direct mixture of 79% nitrogen, blah, 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 and that connected to this Earth of spinning atmosphere is the vacuum of space. And as the Earth spins through it, it doesn't lose all of its atmosphere to the vacuum of a much lesser pressure system. That's what I'm saying. I don't.
And again, what do we see the evidence? And again, you go up to 10,000 feet. Does sea level lose its pressure to 10,000 feet?
Yes.
And let's forget about space right now. Just going from sea level to 10,000 feet.
That's what causes weather.
If sea level lost its pressure to 10,000 feet, then 10,000 feet should be the same, or it should be, if you measure it between the two, then you should equalize to whatever the pressure would be at 5,000 feet.
No, there's a constant movement of all that stuff. It's very fluid system, and that's why we have weather and why we have winds.
Right, but there's an average pressure at 10,000 feet, and there's an average pressure at sea level. I mean, there's little variations between it, right? But there's an average pressure at sea level. You know, it's called 1 atmospheric pressure. That's what they put on their charts. Okay, so, and then you go higher and you get less. So you have to, I think it's on, I have to come up with an explanation for this. So my explanation is more, it seems reasonable to me that we have to come up, it is not a tire, that everything would be equal. If I saw everything equal, then I would have to come up with some other explanation in my head of why is everything equal on this system that I have in my head, but it's less and less and less. So we get up to 10,000 feet. So,
okay.
And whatever you want to call it, you know, the gravity thing, you know, I know you don't like the word gravity. You have.
I don't like it. It's that they're just using that to describe the moon being in orbit of the Earth, and I can go out tonight. It'll be
but no.
Go ahead.
But nobody knows what gravity is. They just look at the effects of it. You know, we hit the ground. We never just all of a sudden go one day, stand up and go, oh, I'm floating off the Earth, right? Whatever that is that's holding us to the Earth, that's what they just call it, gravity, right? They don't have any.
But it's called weight. That's
explanation down to the molecular level.
No, but
how that works.
The problem is that gravity means weight, and weight makes more sense is the fact that you weigh more than the air around you. It can't support you. But if you fill up a helium balloon, then all of a sudden it weighs less than the air around it, and so it goes up. So when it doesn't really just fly with me that that gravity then now talking about would that affect, if you want to call that gravity, then I'll agree with you. Okay, great. Gravity, that's fine. But the problem becomes when they say that we're going around the sun because of gravity and that the moon is going around us because of gravity, which is, fairly ridiculous. I mean, if you go out tonight, it's almost a full moon, look up at the moon and think, oh, it's taking a month to fall around the Earth because of gravity. And if gravity was true like they say, then how is the moon moving away from the Earth? Shouldn't it be getting closer?
Oh. Well, again, this has to do with a different force, centrifugal force. Right. Just like, so I'm sure you've heard this before, so I'd just be reiterating it. But again, as far as gravity, and you were talking about weight, so, this is called, when you get into the talk of the scientific and all, that they call it mass rather than just weight. So the weight, for example, you have a certain weight, but that's only in relation to where we are on the Earth.
Again,
so if you were in a smaller,
right, you're presupposing that there's other places that you can go. So look at this though. If you have a 10,000 foot tire, okay, so we say we've got this huge 10,000 foot tire, would not there be more pressure at the bottom of that tire than there would be at the top?
You're talking about air pressure inside the tire?
Yeah, so it's a pressurized.
I don't know. I'm not really.
But wouldn't there be?
If you were out and if you took that out into space, there would be none. In other words, okay, these scientific people call you have a certain mass.
Hold on, you're answering a question.
Let's get back to the moon.
Hold on. I said you have a 10,000 foot tire, so it's on Earth, on the ground. 10,000 foot tire.
Right.
Okay, it's under pressure. It's all under pressure. Wouldn't there be more pressure at the bottom of the tire than at the top? Because of the
slightly.
Weight. Okay, well that's what I'm saying is makes sense on the Earth. All right, give me an answer to the other question.
That's because
don't go anywhere. You're listening to Jeranism tonight.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like Beyond the Veil with Chris Chris and Cherie Geo. X Squared with Brooks Agnew. Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas. Jeranism Raw with Jeran and Missa. Fearless with Frank Castle. Strange World with Mark Sargent. The Eye of Ra with Ra Castaldo. The Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray. Ironworks with Josh Corey. The Kev Baker Show. And dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR Live. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Kavanaugh nomination, Florence aftermath. I'm Ann Cates. The Senate Judiciary Committee has decided to hold a public hearing next Monday with Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the woman who accused him of sexual misconduct in high school. Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine, one of the pivotal votes, says the testimony will be vital.
It's important that there be a very thorough interview and that we see both individuals respond to the allegations. There are an awful lot of questions, inconsistencies, gaps, and that's why, to be fair to both, we need to know what happened.
The Trump administration is cutting the number of refugees allowed into the U.S. next year to 30,000. The announcement comes despite calls from global humanitarian groups that this year's cap of 45,000 was too low. The death toll is rising in the Carolinas in the aftermath of Florence. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says the situation is still dangerous.
Right now, the Black, Little, Lumber, Cape Fear, and Neuse rivers are inundated with major flooding, and 13 more rivers are forecast to reach major or moderate flood stage. Please don't make yourself someone who needs to be rescued.
Federal investigators remain at the scene of a series of gas explosions that destroyed dozens of homes near Boston. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker says the recovery process is underway.
As we move from what we've referred to as phase 1 into phase 2 and then into phase 3, where people can get back into their homes and they have access to electricity, but there are a whole bunch of other things associated with not having gas power that become significant issues for them.
On Wall Street, the Dow fell 93 points, the Nasdaq off 114. I'm Ann Cates.
You must unite what has been set aside.
We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. I appreciate you joining me. And that last caller, that was the Glober. He calls himself the Meat Baller, and I'm the Pancaker. But I felt like Lloyd Bridges there.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines.
And I don't like that description of a pancaker because I don't believe I live on a pancake. I believe I live on Earth. And, so all this discussion about what shape it is, well, I'm not really sure it has a shape. It certainly seems to have a layout. That layout certainly seems to be level, certainly shows in all water, and the fact that we see much further than is allowed by being on a sphere Earth. And even the thought anymore just boggles my mind. It makes more sense to me that I live here on Earth, and rather than I have to be placed on a object that is moving with high speed and with spin into a vacuum of space in which other things are all moving at high speeds and spin, in which that system is in another system of high speeds and spin, and so on and so forth, and that space goes on for eternity, and there's all these planets and there's all these suns, and they all came from nothing in a Big Bang 14-something billion years ago, where nothing became every bit of matter that there is. Sorry, it's just not. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That is a awfully big extraordinary claim, and the evidence in my mind is quite insufficient for me to adopt that belief. So that's kind of how I look at it. Is, remember, we were all 4 years old, 5 years old, or younger with Sesame Street and Earth. If you haven't seen that one, it's on DITRH's channel. A video that they put in front of kids where it's just the picture of the Earth and some little being saying Earth. So you've already put this into children's heads. You've put it into the classrooms, and before you know it, it becomes part of your belief system. Now, that being said, once you get to a certain point and you kind of start to question these things and you get ridiculed or whatever, then I go back to the point of saying, time out. Let me erase what I was taught, because that doesn't really seem fair. You taught me when I was 4 years old. And if this is so true, then I'll just come to that conclusion on my own. So you erase everything, you look at the world that you're presented, and then you say, okay, now convince me of these things that you taught me when I was 6 years old. Now it's your job to convince me of the claims you're making. I'm not making any claims. I'm looking at the world as presented. When I see a mountain of Canigao from 175 miles, I see the mountain of Canigao 175 miles away. So now, if you're going to tell me, actually, you don't see that mountain, that the mountain is really behind a curvature of the Earth, and it's being lifted up, then I need to see the kind of evidence that would allow me to change my belief system to yours or to adopt your beliefs. And there's a reason why they didn't teach us in this order, because we would all get to this point and be like, you're freaking crazy. I'm not spinning. I don't feel it. I'm not flying through space. I don't feel it. The effects that I think would happen based on that idea don't take place. So now when I ask for evidence, I get called a lot of names, or I just get these explanations that leave out the root cause and are the same explanations that they taught us in school. My warning to people is that I went to school also. So I believe the same thing the Globers believed. I used to believe it. So it's not like I'm not one of those people who say, like, if you believe in the globe, you're a freaking idiot, this and that. No, I don't really think that, because I also see that we were taught it, and we were taught flat Earth was stupid. But I do think that people should be able to really objectively look at what happened to us when we were given these facts. How much evidence came along with it? How were we taught? Did they include lies? Did they include stories, like it's storytelling? And is there the kind of evidence that would call those things facts? I mean, when you've got people saying boats go over the curve, and now you go out there and you observe it yourself. And again, if you haven't done this, then you don't have a right to say, oh, no, that doesn't happen, or I've never seen it happen, because it does take your eyes. I'm not saying that you can always see it on the screen in front of you. When you go out to the beach and you look at a boat with your eyes, eventually that boat starts to disappear from the bottom up. And then when it disappears, if you pull out your camera and zoom in, it will reappear. Now, people say, no, you can't pull up boats from behind the curve. Well, we don't believe there's a curve. So no, we're not saying that you can pull up boats behind the curve. That's ridiculous. The only person who thinks you can pull things up from behind a curve are Globers. They're the ones who say the reason we see things is because they're coming up over curves, and the reason we see the lasers that's being bent above the curve. They're the ones saying that. So I think we need to be clear about our distinction between who is making claims and who isn't. And I don't think I did a very good job of showing that, but I did try during the Reds debate, because they were going on and on about, I need to argue my model. And I said, I don't have a model. I'm not arguing that. I'll argue against the heliocentric model. And they said, nope, that's not the debate. The debate is you argue your model. So I went in there and just said, I don't have a model, because once you've argued a model, you have become biased. You have become adopted or married to this idea. And I don't want to be married to the idea of flat Earth or anything. I want to objectively look at the world and make a decision based on the evidence given. So if I get married to a model and say there has to be a dome because the Bible says so, well, now you've become closed off to the idea that maybe it's just an atmospheric dome. Maybe it's a liquid helium that if you've ever seen liquid helium act, it actually reverses gravity and crawls to the top of the container. So are we in a container where this liquid crawls to the top? You can't be open if you've adopted belief systems. I realized this a long time ago. I try and shed them. My work every day is to shed my belief systems, because when you've shed them, you've either come to the conclusion of something and it's no longer a belief, or you've found evidence that is against that belief and shed it for that reason. And I can't blame anybody for ever doing that. That's what you should do. You should end life with no beliefs. Of course, that's a pipe dream, but I'm saying that would be a good goal. Let's go to the next caller. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from? You're on. I hear you. You're on in Washington, maybe? All right. Well, if you were on hold and you've been waiting to come on the show, that you've been waiting for 30 minutes, and I'll go back to you in a second. Hopefully people understood what I was saying there, that it's just I'm not the one making claims. Yeah, do I say the Earth is flat? Well, I've kind of come to that conclusion based on the evidence and based on all of the given things that, it tells me that the Earth, and when I say flat, and I actually agree with some people who have made videos recently who says we shouldn't have used that word. Yeah, you're probably right. Going back, if I could, the idea of saying flat Earth is a polarizing issue. It is immediately going to put you in the scorn. Again, I have a very funny story about this coming up in a half hour, but it'll immediately put you in the scorn of others, and that's not the best way to get your point across. They already hate you, and then you go out there telling them things that might challenge their belief system, and they're going to fight back and with some malice. So that's not the best way to go about it. So yes, the idea of flat Earth, because I've also heard people say, like, these flat earthers, they can only think in 2D. I don't even know what that means. Like, what are you talking about? Nobody who thinks the Earth is flat thinks it's a piece of paper. So what do you mean 2D? I certainly think in 3D. Everything around me is in 3D, and it doesn't make the Earth a sphere. What does that have to do with being 3D? The guy Vsauce, you may have seen some of his videos, said something very interesting. I don't know how many people know this, but and I'm not even sure I knew it for sure. But he said that no matter what telescope you're talking about, the best telescope in the world, the highest magnification telescope that there ever was, no telescope has ever seen a star as anything other than a point of light. So to go further than that and say they're all suns and they've got planets that orbit them and everything like that, there's no star has ever been seen as more than a point of light. So why would we then jump to the conclusion that these points of lights are stars and that there's some crazy distance away that is unfathomable for even humans to even comprehend, when you're talking about the closest star being 25 trillion miles? And for those who don't know, that is is that 5 sets of zeros? No. It's 4 sets of zeros, yeah. So 25 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0. And 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years. I know some people say that's not a good description. Well, what I'm trying to explain is how big 1 trillion is. If 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years, then just imagine the idea of 25 trillion miles. Think of how far something is away from you when it's 2 miles away. Then think 5 miles away. Think of the closest city to you that's 30 miles away. Think that's pretty far. 30 miles is a good jaunt. That's going to take you 30 minutes on a freeway. That's pretty far. And then think, oh, but we can see stars 25 trillion miles away. Again, I mentioned last week, and I think I got off the subject, but you can go out tonight and probably see the same thing. Go out and look at Mars and find a star that's near it, right around it somewhere, and you'll get this nice red, bright star, Mars. Call it a planet if you want, wandering star. And then the little star behind it, go inside or you look up on your app and find out how far that star is. The other night when I did it, it was something like 144 light years away. And so you take that 144, multiply that by 6 trillion, and you come out to, I don't remember what it was, 795. So 795 trillion miles. So then you just need to look at that star and Mars right next to it. They're right next to each other. And the distance between them is 795 trillion miles. Then look at the night sky tonight. Go out and look at it. Look at the stars and just really contemplate what you were taught. is there the kind of evidence that would allow you to adopt that as part of your belief system? I believe the answer is no. I believe that we adopted it as part of our belief system because it was indoctrinated and forced on you at such an age that there's nobody who's ever come out of fourth grade, at least maybe not. Maybe now there is some children, but when I grew up in the 80s, nobody came out of fourth grade and didn't believe in the globe. It's impossible because it is forced upon you and forced into your belief system. And, I'm not sure that's the way you want to do it. Let's try this caller one more time. Oh, it looks like they called back in possibly. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from? Hello, Washington. I can hear you shuffling papers. Are you listening to the show? Are you listening to the show? Washington. On hold. Okay, we're gone. I have no idea what's going on with that guy. Let's go to the next caller. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from?
Jaran, this is your meatballer guy calling back again. I just wanted to get one last thing in with you.
Sure. Quick.
Your tests that you're doing, the one that you had with the fishing line that would be floating on top of water.
Correct.
I've been thinking about that, and I think, did you come up with that idea?
Yep. Well, actually, no. I mean, some people.
Okay. Well, that to me. Okay. Well, anyway, to me, that would be the ultimate test. So if you could actually do that, that would be better than any light thing, but it would have to be really set up and really tested out. In other words, like make sure that whatever body of water you do it on, that it just barely floats, and so you'd have like the salinity of the water, that you would know how much force would actually take. So you'd have to like take a test and string out maybe 100 yards of line and see how much force it takes to pull it down 10 feet underwater, and then mark it all down and keep records to see how much force you would really have to be pulling on each end for it to actually be pulled down if that actually happened.
The reason that we've kind of gone away from that is so far it would only work, I think it would work perfectly in an acrylic or plexiglass tank. But to do it in any kind of a real body of water, you have the problem of maybe there's a stick or a leaf that goes under goes under the line and causes it not to be able to go under the water. And there's just no way to have people patrol 3 miles or 2 miles of water.
Well, I was thinking like 10 miles or something like that. But and I was thinking about that also. And I was thinking, okay, you could have little remote control boats, little model boats, going out there with a little webcam, and could just, rather than human beings going on there, could just zip down that line just to go the whole distance to see what it looks like everywhere.
Yeah, maybe drone.
And then if you really test it, and just
any kind of boats is going to cause currents. It's going to cause the water to move. That's the least thing.
But if you're pulling it down like a foot or 2 feet in underwater, when you pull it taut on each end,
got you.
That shouldn't be any problem there. I'm just saying, I think that this can be done. Like you could have little tugboats attached maybe to the line every
we can't have anything attached
quarter mile or something like that with a little
attached to the fishing line?
By fishing line, just attached to the fishing line by fishing line or something that's not going to affect it, just so it can be pulled along and kept at like quarter mile distances with a webcam or something like that. So you can actually see each part of the line. I think it's doable. I think that both sides would say, yeah, this is, because I can't figure out anything that would be against it, okay? Anything with refraction or anything like that, I cannot see anything against it, as long as the line is actually pullable.
Okay, I agree with you, but let me ask you,
strength.
What would you say if tomorrow, or on Thursday, that I see the mirror flashes from 25 miles away?
Well, again, I think all of this has to do with the refraction of the atmosphere. Again, with that, like I said, with that laser light, the sugar water shows it at an extreme. It doesn't matter what kind of light. Any kind of light is going to do the same thing.
A laser light is a laser. It's one coherent beam all the way along the water. But flashing a mirror light is completely different. That there's, somebody can see that laser all along the side of the water. Anybody can stand anywhere on the water and they're going to see that laser going across. But nobody can see the mirror flashes except for the person who's in direct line with the mirror being reflected off the sun. So,
I don't agree with that. But
so, do you know they used it in World War II?
Just for an example, with a laser light. But a laser light. Well, if they had lasers, they'd probably use lasers too. But a laser light, as soon as it hits that first molecule of air, is starting to be diffracted just little by little by little. It's just, do they get in between the molecules, or do they hit on the molecules? However it is, and it gets diffracted.
Okay, so if you know what a mirror signaling device is, like an emergency signaling device from a mirror.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I haven't studied them, but I do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, you can look up heliograph and see why they were so effective in the wars, and it's because they were impossible to intercept. The codes that were being not impossible. You would have had to been in the line of connectors, meaning that there was certain people on certain mountains, and they would signal to each other, Morse code or whatever, with these mirrors, and they knew that the signal couldn't be intercepted because the person would have to be in direct line with the other two, which they were on mountains, so there's nobody who could be standing in the middle of the air getting the information from one place to the other. So, and if you think about it, it's just a mirror, and think about when you see a reflection of something. So the person's going to be with the mirror reflecting the sun towards me. Now, if I see those flashes from the mirror, I'm not seeing a flash somewhere along the line between me and him. I only can see the flash because I'm seeing the mirror reflect the sun, is what I'm saying.
And it's the same, yeah, but that's basically the old style laser light. I mean, you could have a white laser light and it would be the same thing. The reason they wouldn't be able to see it as easily is because you have a sun that's the same color as what you're seeing in. It would just be a
laser.
Let's, for an example, if there was a cloud in between the two mirrors or the two people that were signaling, that cloud, they would be able to look at the cloud and they would see it lighting, less lighting, less lighting. If I understand that they didn't have lasers back in World War II to be able to do this.
Used them because if somebody's on the side, somebody could be way on the side and looking in the sky, see the laser going across, and as it's flashing, because they're using the little thing that's making Morse code, they would be able to pick up the signal from the side. But they couldn't do that because the sun doesn't work like a laser. The reflection is you're seeing the reflection from the mirror. You're seeing the flash.
Yeah, I understand you're saying that, but we don't agree.
Okay, we'll go look it up.
It's basically basically the same kind of light.
Completely different. That's what I just said. A laser.
It's an electromagnetic wave.
Okay, the sun being reflected is?
Yeah.
Okay, but you're seeing
the same light.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing a laser is a very directed beam of light.
Right.
A very directed beam of light. The same as the sun would be reflecting on that mirror is a very directed beam of light. It's like when you go, like on the old, you can do the same idea is here. You go out onto, depending upon on the street lights outside, you have a carbon arc. That's a very directed beam of light. Where you would have an incandescent, it's more divergent beams of light.
Okay, so think about.
But it's all the same. It's the same light.
Okay, think about a mirror when it's flashing. There is no, it's not reflecting a beam that is like a super condensed beam, like a laser beam. It's a very wide angle. You're doing it off a mirror, so it's not even going to go any distance until it becomes completely dispersed. It would get completely spread out in an instant. That's why if you're seeing the flashes, you're seeing the. So I actually disagree with you now that I'm thinking about it. If what you're saying is from the side.
Okay.
You're saying if there was a cloud from the side, somebody would be able to intercept that message. That isn't true because then you would need the reflection off the mirror would need to travel in a small condensed form until it hit the cloud. But it would be so well dispersed, you would never see it from the side. You would never see it hit the cloud. That's not what it's for. It's not sending a laser beam. It's just reflecting the sun with flashes. So in order to see that reflection,
it's the same.
You need to be in direct line to see the actual flashes off the mirror. I'm telling you, they wouldn't have used it.
And I'm saying
they wouldn't have used it in the war.
It's the same electromagnetic waves.
Yeah, but don't you understand if they're using?
They didn't have lasers back then.
They wouldn't have used them because people from the side.
If they had lasers.
People from the side can see those.
No,
If
they had lasers back then, they'd use the lasers back then because they could turn them off and turn them on real quick and.
Yeah, but somebody from the side.
They wouldn't have to carry around a mirror.
Yeah, but somebody would intercept your signal. Anybody and all the enemies anybody could intercept a signal. They would see the laser flashing. Well, nobody could see a heliograph flashing unless you were directly in line and were the receiving station. I'm telling you, look it up and then.
If you knew where to.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We have to know.
Okay, we disagree, but if we knew where to look at it, and the same with laser. The laser doesn't have to be red. It doesn't have to be green. Lasers can be the atmosphere color. If you want to create a mixture of the colors, so nobody would know where to look. And again, there would have to be something actually in between the two things to actually be able to see it. I mean, if you had super sensitive things to see the differences in the little tiny molecules, because again, the only reason there's a divergence is because it's hitting something in the atmosphere to diverge.
So I'm reading from the Wikipedia for heliograph, which is exactly what I'm talking about. It's a mirror signaling device. And it says the heliograph has some great advantages. It allowed long-distance communication without a fixed infrastructure, though it could be also linked to make a fixed network extending hundreds of miles, and as in Fort-to-Fort network used by Geronimo. It was very portable, did not require any power source, and was relatively secure, since it was invisible to those not near the axis of operation. And it says the beam spread only 50 feet per mile of range. However, anyone in the beam with the correct knowledge could intercept signals without being detected. But you have to know where you're looking. You have to know where the source is going to come from, which we will do. We'll know, I know where he is, and he knows where I am. And then it says, where am I here? It says, in the Boer War, where both sides used heliographs, tubes were sometimes used to decrease the dispersion of the beam. In some circumstances, so it's saying that it only, what did it say, 50 feet per mile of range? So, at 25 miles.
Okay, well, I was just going to say on one thing right there. Did you say dispersion of how many feet in a mile? 50 feet, did you say?
50 feet per mile.
Per mile, and I think a laser does better than that, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, I would have to look it up to see, does it or not.
Right.
But a laser is more directed light than even that.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's saying the mirror is it releases that light, whereas a laser is a focused beam. So to me, when you're talking about, hey, you're not seeing the source of the laser, you're seeing the part of the laser that is creeping up over the hump of the Earth. That argument makes sense because it is a focused beam of light. And if we did live on a ball and somebody was sending a beam from one beach across the water to me, that if the beam got up above the curve and then started to go over, then that is correct. I would see that light and say, I'm seeing the source light. And somebody would say, no, that's actually the point where the light gets over the curve. So I understand the argument. Don't agree with it because I don't think we're on a ball. I don't think there's a curvature in front of it. But the mirror is different.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that thing of seeing it coming up over the curve like that. I don't agree with that. Okay. So now, for example, if there was a cloud above the curve, and then that one light went, the laser went up and hit that cloud, then the person on the other side of the bump could see that cloud light up, but they wouldn't actually see the laser light.
So what do you
from what you're talking about?
So
it seems to me like talking about. And I'm saying.
Hold on. D. Marble's test and other people's tests that have shown 7 miles, 10 miles, 12 miles, when we're seeing from one beach to the other across bodies of water, when they're seeing the laser where it's shot from, what is your explanation if you don't agree that it's the point where the beam comes over the hump?
Okay, just like I showed you with that video with the sugar thing, that's the way it is. Very gradual bending as you would get in a lens, but much lesser, but not that great, because even with the sugar water thing, nobody would see that one.
You're saying that we can actually see the source of the light. That's what you're saying. You're saying that where the person is.
Right.
So that
you could. I'm not going to say you always do, but again, if there was no refraction, if there was nothing, you would see. There would be no distortion at all. And a lot of the videos that I see them flashing, going one way and the other, and up and down and sideways, and it's never a round, solid
fraction. That's
thing. Like if you did it 100 feet away from each other, and you shine a laser beam, you're going to be able to see definitively it's a round thing. It doesn't waver. It doesn't go this way and that way. You see a very solid light. In all of these videos, you will never. I have never seen a solid light. It's always go this way and that way, and it's all out of shape. So it's being bent.
All right, I'm dropping it again. You got
one way or another.
An hour tonight. That's too much time.
Okay.
Right back, guys. You're listening to Jeranism on the Network.
Okay, I'll take.
This is Elizabeth McCabe, aka Lucky One of Truth Frequency News. I wanted to tell you all about Extendivite from HeartDrop.com. Y'all know I check everything before I air it. When I heard about Extendivite on TFR, I went to HeartDrop.com and started my research. It's got cayenne. That's good for blood and circulation. It stimulates the blood flow. It's got garlic, which fights bacteria like antibiotics, and it lowers the cholesterol and blood pressure. It also has milk thistle, which is the best detox for liver. I couldn't wait to try it out, and I'm glad I did 4 months ago. And here's the obvious results. My hands and feet don't get cold anymore. The varicose veins have faded too. My wrists don't hurt after typing all day. Now I tell you all this because it's true and I want you to really live life. Try Extendivite. Go to heartdrop.com and order it.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendova.
Hi, folks. Let's wind the clocks back 60 years. Food was different. Food provided health and nutrition, and using supplements was minimal. Unfortunately, now we have chemicals, GMOs, herbicides, and pesticides that can be quite lethal in the name of our food supply, and of course the ever-loving dollar. Supplementing our diets can be very important to stay healthy. Cleansing from daily intruders to the body might be critical. Live strong and take charge. Log on to getthetea.com. Our herbal tea is a great way to cleanse from intruders. Our supplements is a great way to maintain and improve your health. When your health is not up to par, go to getthetea.com. No GMOs, no fillers, and organic, and very helpful in keeping you at the top of your game. Life is too short to feel, you know what I mean. Stay in the game, at the top of your game with getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Again, getthetea.com.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death. This is Uncle Walt from the Ironworks. Josh, Corey, and I have chosen to look at life with no fear. No fear of the unknown. No fear of questions about the supposedly well-known. No fear of ridicule for thinking outside the familiar fool's lines. No fear of the boot on the neck of those refusing the party line. No fear of taking on those so convinced of their beliefs they would sooner drink the Kool-Aid than believe they've been fools made. In this world filled with me too, cattle think, can truth's protective layers be peeled back to show the tender, juicy pink? Are we all just grist for the mill? Souls sold against our will, or is that just how it feels? When you're filled to the rim with trivialities so fear-filled and grim, break clear of the fear. Right here, Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 a.m. on TFR. Josh and I and you will hammer out the impurities of technology-driven groupthink, fold in a dash of logic, and quench it all with a bit of absurdity. The Ironworks. Break clear of the fear.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Jeran and Meatballer show, where the Meatballer just argues with anything I say for no apparent reason. No, it's about an hour. It's enough time for the Meatballer this week. But I wanted to read a little bit more from and this is the Wikipedia page for, I lost it. I had it here for a second, and then I lost it. For the heliograph, I'll look it up again, I guess. And there's something interesting that says here at the end. Now you have to think of this, why is that not coming up? Oh, there we go. Heliograph or Wikipedia, and it does say that it travels in a beam, so you did get that part right. You know, I was thinking that you're seeing the reflection, not so much of a beam as much as it is just a flash of light. But then down further, you will see And by the way, you might want to hear this part too. The distance that heliograph signals could be seen depended on the clarity of the sky and the size of the mirrors used. A clear line of sight was required. Okay, so then it says, and since the Earth's surface is curved, the highest convenient points were used. So right there, that tells you that if the Earth's surface is curved, as they say, then there is no point along the curve where you would see the beam of light anyway, or else you could technically be 10,000 miles apart on the Earth and just be shining the beam at the point where the hump supposedly is, and then the person picks up the flashing from that hump. No, you have to have a clear line of sight. So that's the issue at large on Thursday, is since I do not have a clear line of sight, in fact, I am blocked by 150 some odd feet of Earth's curvature, there should be no possible way I can see the flash of the mirror. So that's what we'll be testing. I'll continue on. It says a clear line of sight was required, and since the Earth's surface is curved, the highest convenient points were used. Under ordinary conditions, a flash could be seen from 30 miles with the naked eye and much further with a telescope. And again, I'll be using an infrared camera, P900. So we've got plenty of zoom to act as if it's a telescope. The maximum range was considered to be 10 miles for each inch of mirror diameter. I believe the person on the other side has an 8-inch or 10-inch mirror, so that means 80 miles or 100 miles. Either of those are well within the 25 that we'll be within. Mirrors ranged from 1.5 inches to 12 inches or more. The record distance was established by a detachment of U.S. signal sergeants by the interoperation of stations on Mount Ellen, Utah, and Mount Uncompahgre, Colorado, 183 miles apart on September 17, 1894, with Signal Corps heliographs carrying mirrors only 8 inches square. So with an 8-inch square mirror, they were able to communicate from 183 miles away. Now, both those mountains are very tall. One is 11,527. The other one is 14,321. If you add those together, you get 25,800. Put that into the curvature calculator, and you wouldn't start losing sight until about 190 miles. And they said 180, what did I just read? 187, 183. So it seems to be convenient for their model. However, I am interested in looking further into that because I guarantee you they were not at the peaks. So how high up on these mountains were they? And then let's punch those numbers in. I guarantee you we didn't have somebody standing at 11,527 and somebody standing at 14,321. So it'll be interesting to find out. And it does look like there's a book here. I tried to get it and it says no ebook available. And usually when you see that, that's another interesting thing. And then when you find books that are extremely high priced, that always makes me wonder because what are they trying to hide? So this particular book was called, and the reason there was a little reference down here to the telegraph, a history of Morse's invention and its predecessors in the United States. And I don't see any kind of way to get it. Oh yeah, well, I see it's $109 at Barnes & Noble. I bet you there's some stuff in there that's interesting. So if anybody knows how to get that book for any cheaper, let me know. The Telegraph, a history of Morse's invention and its predecessors in the United States. So the important part there is its predecessors, which would include the heliograph and finding out exactly where these two mirrors were and do they match the so-called curvature of the ball Earth. Name of the book was, again, The Telegraph. So I want to look into that, but that kind of tells us what's going on with this heliograph. It is a interesting device, and with the IR camera, and I saw how bright lights are shown on there, I think we'll easily be able to pick up if there is any kind of flash going on at the point of the mirror. It'll certainly be interesting to see what happens. Was there something else I was going to read you from here? Let's see. It talks about the history. Carl French Goss was the first one to do it. But no, that was pretty much all I wanted to read. So check it out. It's kind of a long Wikipedia. There's another 5-6 paragraphs. And let's see. We'll read about automated heliographs. No, we don't need that. And that's about it. So anyway, that's going to be Thursday. We'll see what happens, if I can see that or not. Usually the belief would be that if I went out there with my eyes, that I'm not saying that I think I would be able to see it. The reason for that is because you're looking through a column of heavy atmosphere, the heaviest atmosphere being at the bottom, right? We discussed this earlier. And the most distorted atmosphere anywhere is always going to be above water because water is evaporating, causing water molecules to go up into the air, causing a tough time seeing. So like when Meatballer said that he never has seen a point light from across the water. Well, of course not, because you're looking across water and it's going to break up that beam into, kind of a wide spectrum, or it's going to be all over the place. So I see what he's saying, but many people are saying, why do we see that point, you can see that it's still coming from a source. Again, like I said, I agree with the Glober argument, or at least I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I understand where they would come from. So that's why I said, well, let's think of a way that we can get around that. The way is to do it with a heliograph in the way that you need to have a direct line of sight. So I don't think you would see it with your eyes. Now, people in the past have said that's because the Earth is curved. I'm saying, no, it's because you're looking through 25 miles of distorted air. Now, the IR camera that I've seen clearly cuts through that distortion. I've seen it already for myself, seen where you're looking without the IR filter on there, and then you can't see very far. And then when you put the IR filter on, it cuts through, obviously not all of it, but it does a better job of seeing through that convoluted atmosphere. And the hope would be that we can see mirror flashes over there. We'll see. Maybe not. But these are the kind of tests that if somebody was a globe believer, that they should be trying to do. Tests that disprove the globe model. Tests that tear down the current thing. Not just people like Meatballer who come and just regurgitate the exact things that we already learned. Because the difference between us two is if there was ever a deception, if we were ever being fooled, if we were ever being lied to, clearly one method of thinking is the way to find that out. The other is the way to further allow people to be subjected to lies and deception. When you just go around repeating what you're told, no, the king is great. Yeah, but they need all these tax money and he doesn't hurt us. They don't enslave us. Then you run the risk of the king actually enslaving everybody and doing all these negative things, but you're going around and promoting it as these are the way things are supposed to be. Whereas if somebody comes along questioning those things and saying, hey, I think we're being taken for a ride here. Hey, I think we're being lied to. Hey, I think it's possible that these things might not be true. Then that person is the only person out of those two who has a chance to get to the bottom of it, to reveal deception. And if they're wrong, well, then their research and will be shown. They'll show that they are wrong. They'll find the actual truth. But the one thing you can't do is go around like Wolfie, like Red's Rhetoric, like Soundly, like Slice Barcane, like Cool Hard Logic, like Voice of Reason, or like Five Red Pears, all these guys who just keep repeating everything out of a school book. There is no benefit. There's nothing positive that can come of that. There's just nothing. You're not going to ever do anything for anybody. That letting them come to those conclusions on their own wouldn't be better served. And that's my opinion on that. To just keep repeating what we were taught, well, great. If that's the truth, then you don't need to help it. The truth doesn't need your assistance, doesn't need to hold your hand. The truth does fine on its own. The things that need to have their hands held are things that are lies, things that are deceptions. They need to be coached along the entire way. This is what we teach. This is what we put in school books. This is what we tell people. These are our explanations. We need Neil deGrasse to get up there on Joe Rogan's show every three months and to repeat all these things over and over and over again, even though they're not true. And we need to, that's how you get a lie across. And I think it was Mark Twain who said, a lie gets all around the world before the truth gets its pants on. And that's the truth, that if you start speaking this lie and put it in textbooks, then you're going to have teachers and professors and everybody believes it. And you set up a system where those conformists, which are the people who don't question things, the people who do what they're told, the people who respect authority, those people get moved through the school system to the very top. They get degrees. They become PhDs. Those people, I'm not saying for 1 second that they're not smart. Don't ever say that I said that. I'm saying they are conformists who follow the rules, who do good at regurgitating, who are very smart. Nobody said they're not smart. But the problem becomes if what they're learning is not the truth, then you're going to have a pretty effed up world where all of the smart people, all of the intelligent people, all of the people who are professors, who are teachers, who are working at these universities or in high-level science places, all those people are going to believe very heavily that they know the truth. They read it, they regurgitated it, they got good grades, they got a degree, and they go on and think that they couldn't possibly have been taught a lie. And so you've weeded out the people who question things. You've weeded out the people who say, wait, can you explain that to me again? Wait, it doesn't make sense. Can you explain it to me again? Those people get sent to the principal's office. Those people do not graduate from college. Those people do not go to college. They become frustrated by the school system and end up being a enslaved, tax-paying citizen. Whereas the people that are rewarded for their adherence to dogma and doctrine and exactly what they're taught and regurgitate only what they're told and are unable to think outside the box, Those people are rewarded with high-level, high-paying jobs to where they're well taken care of. It is not in their interest to question what they were taught. Neil deGrasse Tyson has no reason at all to question anything that he's ever been told. You can call him a scientist. You can think he's a great guy. You can think he wants the truth. He has no benefit to him at all to question anything that he was taught, because that comes with, number one, admitting to the world that you were wrong. Number two, admitting that you thought you were so right and you went around telling people how right you were and you weren't. Number three, all your family and friends who you've told how smart you are and who thought you were smart find out that you were fooled. Number four, you've went around to auditoriums and classrooms and spoke to children and told them how great and magnificent this thing is that you know, even though it turned out to be a lie. And it becomes to the point where he's rich and powerful now, or not, I'm sure he does just fine. It would get to the point where he looks at it and says, well, I'm going to give all that up. And for science to pretend like, oh, whoever comes up with a new emerging truth gets paid. It's just like the people who say, well, they can't be hiding cancer medication. They can't be hiding even the cure because that person would be a millionaire. No, sorry. They're going to stop you from coming out with your cancer cure, just like they would stop anybody that tried to come out with the truth. You're not going to get paid for that. One of the interesting things I've seen one time is Bill Nye was talking about how science works. And he says, if you think that the earth is flat, then just do me a favor, go take a picture of the edge and boom, you'll be rich. You'll get so much money for upthrowing all of science. You'll be so rich. And then he stops and says, or when you get there, just fall off the edge, which is what I prefer. See, that's the problem, is that you're saying you'll be rich. Everybody will give you money. But then you, part of the science community, has said, but I hope you fall off the edge. That's my hope. So you've just admitted to yourself that nobody in the science community wants anything overthrown about anything, okay? Because it calls into question their entire life's work. Everything they've ever done, all into question. So, okay, I went off on that one for long enough. And now we are entering Jeranism Monday Night Raw, the Raw version. So we do have some calls. Hopefully they are for the second. I'm going to check this call real quick to see if they're for the second half or the first half. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this right from? All righty, another one of those. So we got somebody in Palo Alto so far and somebody in Washington. Both you guys, I keep going to you on the call and nobody is there. So let me get into the second half of the show, which is going to be asking for any suggestions or any remembrances or any examples, evidence of various types of forgiveness in your life, in your past, when you have or haven't forgiven somebody. Because I'll just kind of give an update of where I am, and we'll go from there. That, if you know my situation, and I'm sure many of you do, we've had infidelity in my marital relationship. We've had, about 6 months of, purposeful lies. That has all been okay. So we got that. We know that happened. We're moving past that. It's now got to the point of the apologies and the I'm sorry. Let's start over. Let's do all that. So at first my thought has always been, or at least from the beginning has been, I can't trust. How do you love somebody you can't trust? And I'm not sure that that's necessarily even possible, because I think part of that relationship mantra, or part of that relationship lore, part of the maybe it's the unsaid consent between each other, is that there is this certain level of honesty that's expected, and when that's been broken, then it's hard to move forward as a team when you have doubts about one or the other. And then basing it off my past and my experience is that, as I talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that I grew up with a family of my mom and dad until I was about 16 or 17, until they split up. But I never saw, in a weird way, what you might call like love, like affection, like attraction. There was a relationship between my mom and dad that clearly they were married, and I grew up and never thought anything was weird about their relationship at the time. Looking back, I kind of say, well, why didn't they hug or kiss, or why didn't I see a lot of that? But then I found out, as the divorce got into it, that my dad had cheated when I was 3. And when you hear that, then you're like, well, wait a second. So was this one time? Was it? No, it was, numerous times. then you say, okay, well, now it makes sense to where I could picture when my dad got frustrated and left when I was 16 or 17. It was because I don't think he was receiving from my mother what he needed, which was love, which was affection. He found a new wife who he's married to now who does show him those things. And she's a great girl. She's a great lady. So then you start saying, okay, well, then I understand why my dad left. And then you look and you understand then why your mom didn't give those things to your dad. Clearly, because there couldn't have been the level of trust there that I think is required to have, that kind of feeling. So for me, the example for me is my own parents, and I saw them stay together for quote unquote us kids or us children, my sister and I. And that's commendable to a certain level, because I don't know if I would have turned out the same if my dad had left when I was 3 and I had to grow up with either one or the other of them. And who knows, you never know what your circumstances would be. But I think my sister and I turned out to be pretty good people with a pretty good understanding of how families work and everything, because of the fact that we grew up in a normal environment. We still went to, family outings and barbecues and pool parties and had birthdays, and everything was the exact same. We couldn't even notice that there was this certain level of distrust between my parents. But now, looking back, when you find that out, you're like, oh, well, it makes sense. I understand. I definitely understand where my mom would have always had that kind of, queer eye at my dad, just a little bit sideways look. And there just wouldn't be the kind of love and respect between them that I think could have been if he hadn't shown infidelity at the beginning. So that's my kind of example to base things off of. And so I look at it, and Missa may be saying that she's sorry and that she'll spend the rest of her life making it up to me, and that she'll spend the rest of her life being truthful, showing me that she can be honest, showing me that she's sorry. And those things are great to hear, and they're great to imagine. But at the same time, I worry if I would be doing the same thing my mom did, which was always looking with the skeptic's eye. And eventually, when my dad basically cheated a second time and left, is that kind of the inevitable ending? Is it the is that the way it would definitely go? So I'm just looking for other examples. Maybe people have ideas or things that they've seen happen where they can say, in my family or in my relationship, I cheated, my wife has forgiven me, and we've been living 10 years happily, and I now trust her, whatever it is. Just looking for examples to put into my little, basket of examples. So let's go to the first person. Let's see. This is going back to Paul Alto. Are you on this time? I heard a baby.
Hey, Jeran.
I hear you.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic.
All right. So I'm like, the thing about the flat earth versus ball earth thing, and it takes a level of maturity to actually see this horizon and say, I have to go against everything that I've been taught before. And when I look at that horizon, I have to be honest with myself. And no matter what I believe, I see that it is flat. It is flat. When you look at a balloon launch, be honest with yourself. Talking to myself as well. And honestly ask yourself, are you seeing anything that's round? And the answer is no. And it was really hard to actually to actually accept that, for
right. And it doesn't even mean,
and I think that takes a level of maturity.
Right. And you're not even accepting flat earth at that point, but the point that you're getting to, or the point that you got at there, is the part that most people can't even get to. And that's what I think these globers need to recognize, is people like Red's Rhetoric and those, we've turned them off as far as listening to any of their videos, because they can't even get to the point where they say, you know what, you're right, I don't think boats go over the curve like we've been taught. They just keep spitting out the company line. And that's when we're like, you're not even trying. You're not even looking at the world and saying, oh, you're right, that is kind of weird. Or it is weird that they taught us that water goes down the opposite direction in each hemisphere, and then to find out now that that's not true. Just that admission would be great, but they won't even give you that.
Right, and honestly, it's to be honest with themselves
Right.
And to just go with science because you've been taught this is kind of not being honest with yourself. It's a lot like, when you go through therapy and, you have to start being honest with yourself. I think that's kind of like the level that one has to go through when they start to question not only their reality, but, what is this that I'm looking at here? What is this that I'm on here? For example, in San Jose on a clear day, we can see the bridges up the Bay Area. We can see the Dumbarton Bridge, which is a good 20 miles away, and then beyond that is San Mateo Bridge, and so on and so forth. And we should not be able to see that, but by standing on the shoreline, you could actually see the bridges that are far off at the distance.
Right.
And it's just
yeah, and then you got people like Bill Nye.
Because you were talking about that earlier, yeah.
Yeah, people like Bill Nye that say something to the effect of, well, why can't you see Spain from the east coast of the United States? That person is clearly closed off their mind to anything other than what they've been taught, and he's never even thought about it. Because anybody who's thought about it would say, hey, how come I can't see across the Atlantic Ocean? Then you'd say, oh, wait, everything gets smaller with distance. That's 3,000 miles. Impossible to see anything ever. It would just be everything you can ever imagine is too small at that distance. We know that, 1,000, say the World Trade Center or whatever they call it now, Freedom Tower, that's like 2,000 feet. Well, after just like 70, 80 miles, you can't see it anymore because it's too small. It's become so minuscule. So then if that's at 70 or 80 miles, let's say that happens at 150 miles. Well, certainly we realize that there's nothing that we could see from 3,000 miles across the water. So when people have said that, they've just closed their mind. And I know this because when I told my wife, when she said, do you think the earth can be flat? And I said, no, you're crazy. There's no way. Planes go around it. When I said that, I meant it in every way. I told her, no, that's impossible.
Yeah.
Planes go around the earth. We know this. The earth's a ball. And it wasn't until I saw the azimuthal equidistant map and a light switch went off where I realized that we can be so under a certain belief system just simply because of the way we've been trained to think about something. So when she said, is the earth flat? First thing I think about is water falling off the edge. Second thing I think about is planes going around it. We've all seen the globe. We see how it works. No, the earth cannot be flat. It's ridiculous to think that. But then when you see that map and you're like, hold on a second, how would I never even considered before that planes can go around it? So it's the same thing. You have to start looking at all these things that you were taught about the globe and saying, is there other explanations? And that's the honest approach, not just to say, we've been told it's Coriolis force, therefore we know. We've been told we spin, just like that last meatballer caller was talking about. Well, we obviously know that if the air wasn't sticking with the earth as we spin, it would fly off. So we then know that the earth spins with the air going with it. It's like, no, you can't say, you jump to a huge conclusion there. You've already presupposed that the earth is spinning with atmosphere attached to it. I mean, that's a crazy place to start. Of course, you're going to come to the conclusion that it must be spinning with the earth because otherwise it would fly off. But you've already presupposed that we're on a ball that's spinning in space. Crazy.
And then there's the stars. That's the one thing because even those who are open-minded, you start bringing up the stars, and here's these beautiful lights we see in the sky, and there's astrology and all that, and here we believe that we see this Hubble telescope, and it shows us these galaxies and all these beautiful artworks. But really, we got to question: are those artworks? Can we actually see those? Where are those? Because all I see is when I watch a balloon launch, you see the stars, and then you get to one level and they disappear. I mean, why can't we see the stars from space?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And then
that's what blows my mind.
Yeah, I totally agree. And appreciate the call. I got more callers, so I'm going to let you go. But appreciate it. And yeah, when you're talking about the Hubble, it's admitted that none of that stuff is in the human spectrum of vision, the human vision spectrum. Even worse than that, think about this: that every image. Oh, don't think about it. We'll be right back. Go anywhere. Calls about different space.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like The Christopher Everard Show, The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer, Enemy Within Radio with Tom Barnes, Freaky Friday with The Woo Crew, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, America's Evil Genius with Travis Cook, Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Quantum Connections with Lucky, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR Live. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Kavanaugh hearing, the Russia probe. I'm Ann Cates. U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, the woman who accused him of sexual misconduct in high school, will testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee next Monday. Correspondent Phil Mattingly.
Senate Republicans on the Judiciary Committee met behind closed doors with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the chairman Chuck Grassley, to map out the process forward. And basically what's been going on behind the scenes for the last 3 or 4 days has been a pure scramble, trying to address the allegations, trying to figure out what the allegations actually are, and then trying to figure out those next steps. And we now know one of those next steps will be a public hearing.
The president has ordered the declassification of documents and text messages linked to the probe into Russian interference in the election and any Trump campaign connections to the Kremlin. Correspondent Evan Perez reports the Trump administration hopes it will now be seen in a better light.
They believe that the Russia investigation, the beginnings of the Russia investigation, essentially is the fruit of a poisonous tree. This is something they believe that was begun on nefarious means by the FBI, and launching this investigation that has now hung over this White House.
President Trump has also fired another round in the trade war, imposing tariffs on an additional $200 billion in Chinese goods starting next week. China has said it's ready to retaliate. The death toll continues to rise in the Carolinas as Florence moves away. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says the state's highway system is waterlogged by the flooding.
We have more than 1,200 road closures, including 356 primary roads. Our major north-south connector, Interstate 95, and portions of Interstate 40 remain closed to traffic.
At least 32 people were killed by the storm in the Carolinas and Virginia. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 93 points. The Nasdaq closed down 114. I'm Ann Cates.
Wherever you are, make it Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw, and phone lines are open, 213-233-3998. Call in to talk forgiveness, and I'm going to real quick finish off my last thought. Then I got a little story. the thought is, I was saying that every image of the Earth as a ball, if it was from a satellite or whatever, has all been processed through a computer. So we know what computers are capable of. They take data. And so if there's data coming from these satellites, the data goes into the computer. The computer then takes the data and outputs an image. And it's very simple for a computer programmer to take the data from a high altitude or whatever it is that they're taking and output it onto a sphere. So there, the only way you can believe that somebody took a photo of the Earth as a ball would be if you believe in the moon landings. And if you believe that, then it's been 46 years, or actually 49, since somebody has taken, 46, since somebody has taken an image of the Earth, like a photograph with a camera, and said, we can actually look at that person and they say, I took the picture myself. But if you don't believe in the moon landings, like me, then nobody in the history of the Earth has ever taken a photo of the Earth that we can talk to as a ball. It's all satellite imagery coming through data bits and being processed through a computer. So, and you can trust astronauts if you want, like Buzz and Neil Armstrong and Collins, and remember that even when offered $5,000 cash to swear on the Bible that they went to the moon, they wouldn't do it. How do you not, if you're Neil Armstrong and you went to the moon and somebody says, I'll give you $5,000 cash to swear on the Bible that you went to the moon, and then your answer is, knowing you, that's probably not a real Bible? Well, if it's not a real Bible, even more reason for you to do it, jackass. Sorry, get a little upset at those guys. If you went to the moon, then you swear on the Bible. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a believer in the Bible. It doesn't matter if you hate the Bible. It doesn't matter if you worship Satan. It doesn't matter. If somebody asks, Jeran, are you, is your name Jeran Campanella? Swear on this Bible. Sure, I'll swear on it. What the hell? What are you talking about? Why wouldn't I? There's nothing that would make me say, no, I'm not swearing on that. Nope, it's probably a fake Bible. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And then the one that was going to swear on the Bible, Alan Beam, who put his hand on it and said, okay, I'll swear on the Bible. And he said, okay, do you swear against, for treason? This, and he said, no, not treason. Well, what do you mean? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? If you went to the moon, then it doesn't matter if you're swearing against treason, because treason means you fooled your country or went against your country. So why would you have a problem saying that if you went to the moon? So believe as astronauts if you want. That's on you, not me. Let's go to the phones. We got a lot of calls lining up. First up, you're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from?
Hey, Jeran, is this you?
It's me.
All right.
What's up?
This is my first time calling in.
Welcome to the show.
And thank you. And I mean, I agree that NASA are liars, and I don't think that that they can take photos from that far away, like billions of miles away. It just doesn't seem possible to me. But I see that they have an incentive to do that, as to show people, to give the illusion that NASA is important and to pour more money into them, when NASA is actually a military operation. But your points on flat Earth, I don't see why there'd be an incentive to do that. And if you look at the flight patterns, okay, using the Flat Earth Society's model, the flight pattern I'd like to direct you to is from Rio de Janeiro to Johannesburg, and from Tierra del Fuego, which is at the tip of Argentina, to Johannesburg. They are, I believe, they're about the same time in to fly there, right? But according to the Flat Earth model, it would be a much longer flight to fly from Tierra del Fuego to Johannesburg. So, and
okay, so let me ask you.
Okay, you might say that the planes were slowing down, but that would make no economic sense for these companies, and why would they lie about that? That just makes no sense to me.
Okay, well, great point. But what I think you messed up there is you said, I would say that planes are slowing down, and I wouldn't say that. I would say that planes are speeding up. And in which case, when you're talking about economic sense, yes, but on the same end, it's not pilots flying these planes. I mean, people have to understand that they are autopiloted. Every plane that's flying, at least not the little jets, but any kind of airliner with people in it, is being flown from place to place under autopilot. It's being flown with the knowledge of the exact speed of the plane unknown to the pilot, and the exact distance would be unknown. It all is based off GPS. So we have planes that go from, and I'll just give you one to think about. We have planes that go from Sydney to Santiago that are 11 and a half hours. Okay, so that's Sydney to Santiago. It's about 6,000 miles. But when you look at that and you say, okay, well, so they're going, 11 and a half hours, 6,000 miles. When you figure that out, so I'm going to do the math just so I don't mess it up. 11 and a half hours and 600 miles. So when you do that, you get 0.5. All right, so we get 500. What? Is that right? Hold on, I'm sorry. So it's about 500. 500. Yeah, so it's about 500 miles per hour. Okay. So when you do that, though, here's the problem: is that there is in the south a jet stream that goes 250 miles per hour. It probably, if you're looking at average, maybe it averages 200. I've seen it hit 250, but it averages 200. It's the major easterly jet stream down there. So what that means is that the plane is being carried at 200 miles per hour plus the 500 mile per hour speed that it's going. Well, when you figure out how fast the plane is going, how far it's going, either the plane is going 300 miles per hour and being carried the other 200 miles per hour, meaning it's only going 500, but that doesn't make any sense because, like you just said, economical sense would be to go the maximum speed of the plane and let the wind carry you an additional 200 miles per hour, in which case they're going about 750 miles per hour. And then when you do 750 miles per hour instead, multiply that by the 11 and a half hours. Now, all of a sudden, the plane could be traveling with no knowledge of anybody in the plane, 8,625 miles instead of 6,000. So it's possible very easily without anybody knowing at all, anybody, that the plane is traveling 8,600 miles instead of 6,000 miles. So you have to realize that it is possible that planes could be going faster. Now, here's my question to you. If you can find me, and this is your homework assignment, find me a cruise that does those same trips you just gave me. So the Sydney to, you said Rio de Janeiro to Johannesburg. Now is that the south of South America to South Africa? Right?
Yes.
Okay, so, find a cruise that goes point to point, because there is no cruises that go from South America to Australia or New Zealand unless they take multiple days up at the islands and kind of dance around up there and come down to Easter Island or go along the Philippines and up to Alaska. There's no direct line of cruise. To me, that's because it would be known then. These planes, we just added 200 and something miles per hour to the flight. Well, a cruise goes 21 miles per hour. I mean, it's not going to go, it maybe could go 25. It's not going to go 50. So there is no making up that distance. And then look at undersea cables. There's none run between between Australia or New Zealand and South America. To me, that just screams, why wouldn't there be cables there? And then when I think of the flat Earth model, I say, well, because when they went out to run them, they would have been thousands of miles short. So those are the reasons that I still generally think that map is possible, the AE map or the layout is possible. And I understand where you're coming from and agree with your at least line of thought. But I think there is explanations for some of those planes being able to do that, especially when you look at the fact that all those flights are planned, meaning it wouldn't be a big deal for somebody just to program one flight to be the same time as the other flight. And if it's going only 480 miles per hour rather than 540, nobody's going to know that. I mean, it's not going to call into question anything. Nobody's going to say, hey, how come we're not moving faster? How come we're not, they're just going to allow the plane to get them there when the, arrival and departure time says.
Well, you said that it was 6,000 miles, but from Sydney to Santiago, but looking at the flat Earth model, it looks nowhere near that. It looks a lot more. And to cover that distance, even going at 750 miles an hour with the jet stream on you, I just don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I've struggled too with it before, and that's why I'm not sure that map is necessarily correct, or that because I think it comes out to about 9,000 miles. So yeah, and I said 8625 going 750.
Also, if this is the flight, are we talking about the flight from Santiago to Johannesburg or to Sydney?
I was talking about Sydney to Santiago.
Okay, so if you're flying from Sydney to Santiago, okay, the flight would surely go across the western coast of North America, but I think that people would be able to see the western coast
of
North America if they passed it.
No, they wouldn't be flying in the jet stream then. In order to stay in the southerly jet stream, you need to stay in the south. And so if you're looking at the AE map, it would be more like a curve. You have to stay south.
Okay, but if you do that, if you do that, that adds so much more mileage. And I'm just, and there's no way, I could see no way possible that they can make the plane go that much faster, even with the jet stream, to get there. Plus, the jet stream only goes one way. So.
Well, no, at different heights, it goes back the other way. But so I'm talking about, and they're also at, that plane flies usually 42,000 feet, which, again, my only thing is enough evidence for me to dismiss it? No, because I don't know what planes could do at higher altitudes. For instance, the higher you get, we know the atmosphere thins. When the atmosphere thins, there's less air resistance. The plane might actually even move faster. Maybe you can break the sound barrier when there's no air to break. There's lots of questions that people immediately adopt the mainstream explanation for. And I don't think with something this serious as the flat earth or the ball earth, that it's okay just to give them any length. And you just say, you know what, they say that the sound barrier is broken at this speed, so there's no plane that can go faster than that. Well, yeah, but the sound barrier is broken because you're going through a bunch of air. So if you're at 42,000 feet, who's to say they're not going 1,000 miles per hour? Can you or I say that that's not possible? Can you say that a plane can't go 1,000 miles per hour? I can't say that.
I mean, there hasn't been a plane on record that I think has gone that fast.
Well, there has been when you're talking about like the Concorde and stuff, but I'm saying, could it be possible that a plane goes 1,000?
I'm talking about like a commercial flight.
Yeah, the Concorde was commercial, but I'm saying the Concorde.
I mean, look, I don't.
No, I'm just saying. Here's my only thing to you, is that you seem willing to just dismiss kind of some ideas because you don't think it's possible, and I'm saying I'm not willing to say that because I don't have enough evidence to say it's not possible. Like if somebody says, Jeran, bet your life if a plane can go over 1,000 miles per hour, not with people in it, I wouldn't bet that. Because I'd say, I don't know. I mean, yeah, based on what they tell us, or sure. I mean, I've got other ideas that could be true. So, I don't know. I just don't think it's safe to go that route.
All right. Well, and then, so is your view on like other planetary stuff? Do you even believe in other planets?
That they're traveling stars, you mean, or that they're wandering stars? Or you mean like actually?
Believe in that the sun exists, or like Mars exists, or even the moon exists?
Yes, but not Mars is not. I don't believe that it's a place you can go to and land robotic cars on, if that's what you mean.
Do you believe that Mars is flat?
No, I don't think. I think Mars is a light in the sky. I don't think it's a place. Just like I don't think.
So you think that's just CGI?
No, I just said it's a light in the sky. What do you mean CGI?
So what is it then?
I don't know. Here's the again.
Like is Mars CGI?
It depends what you're talking about. The stuff we get from like the rover and stuff like that. It's up.
You think that's CGI?
Island. No, I think it's Devon Island. I think it's on Earth. Here's the thing: is that I'm not making the claims. I'm saying so. I don't want to make a claim and say I think it's CGI. I think it's this. To me, it appears to be a light in the sky. So for somebody to have me believe that it's something else, then it's their responsibility to give me the evidence that makes me say, oh, you're right. And the evidence I get from NASA is not worthy of me saying, oh, this is definitely true. They're the only ones up there. Nobody else has ever been there. It's a military organization. You said that yourself at the beginning. So really it comes down to who am I trusting when I'm told Mars exists? And then they put a rover there, and the rover is just ridiculous. Like, why don't we see we never see sunsets on Mars, or we never see the stars from Mars. All we see is this little robotic car that never breaks down, that's been going on for 8 or something years when it was only scheduled to do a year and a half, that never has any problem with the dust storms that we're told about that happen on Mars, that has enough. The thing weighs like 20,000 pounds or something ridiculous. Like it's the size of a full bus weight-wise, and it's getting enough energy from the sun to travel around from solar panels. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it seems like a very good story. And then we find up in Devon Island that there's a little robotic thing going around with a camera on ground that looks exactly like Mars, and they say, oh, this is our practice yard. This is where. So imagine that. Like, you're NASA, you have all this money. You could build a little practice yard in your facility to where the terrain is like Mars, yet they go and take a bunch of people to an island up in Canada and set up shop up there with all these satellite dishes and all these trucks and all these remote control. It's like, what? Like, what a waste of money. Why would you do that?
Okay, but that's not the purpose. But that's not the purpose that NASA is for. NASA is supposed to rule, or is supposed to, like they're trying to, they might have like satellite destroyers or whatever, and they might, theoretically they could use Mars or another planet as a base for them, or just for any of their operations that can't be done.
Wouldn't they start with a base on the moon? Why would you want a base on Mars?
The moon?
Well, yeah, I mean, if nobody's been back to the moon, where if, in my opinion, if you're looking for military superiority, whoever is on the moon could threaten nuclear war, and that's not something that can be threatened now because, well, people have their own beliefs about nuclear weapons, but you really couldn't even threaten it if such thing existed, because the other person would just launch one back at you in the same amount of time, and you would both be annihilated. But if you're on the moon, then you could say, go ahead, shoot your weapon, and then they'll shoot theirs, and then we'll shoot ours last, and we'll live, and you'll all die. So it's a huge military plus to be on the moon.
I just want to figure out the bottom line of this. Okay, so why do you think this matters? Like why does the Earth being flat matter?
Because if we were lied to on that level, then it changes everything for everyone. And I think there's so many things that happen that seem like lies from the government, that seem like collusion, that seem like conspiracies, that a lot of people have a hard time facing because they think there couldn't be a lie that big. The biggest thing I've ever heard about the moon landing is it can't possibly be fake because too many people would have to be in on it, even though you wouldn't even need anybody really in on it, more than 10 people. But they come across like that's the reason, that no secret has ever been held from people that wasn't eventually found out. There's even studies that say the moon landings would have been found out within 4 years. They make that like a scientific fact, but they don't know what secrets I have that I've never told, or you have that you've never told, or anybody has that hasn't been told. So the science, you can't do science on that. And there is conspiracies and secrets that happen every day in our lives, all over the place. Everything that you do throughout the day is basically meandering through some sort of conspiracy, which is people getting together, colluding to either take money from you or take whatever from you. And so when I look at the whole thing, the flat earth is something that wakes everybody up. Because if we can show it to be true, like if I show this test on Thursday or other tests that have been shown, if we can get people to wake up to that, then they'll recognize finally that they can be lied to on the highest level. And then what's followed by that is people being skeptical. And that's the most important thing. If we don't go through school and simply believe what we're told by teachers, because we understand that we could be being deceived, that the teachers themselves could have been deceived, that it is possible to put lies in a textbook. We should see that already with Columbus. None of us learned anything about the negative things about him when we grew up in school. So we have to recognize somebody made a textbook knowing what Columbus did and completely and totally lied about the entire events, made him seem like he's some sort of special guy, even though he was lost and never stepped foot in America, killed people and savagely chopped off, children's legs and fed the children to the dogs. All these things, pretended he was God, that he called for an eclipse. So when we find that out, then we realize that textbooks aren't the truth. Textbooks are a story told to us for a certain reason. And we need to investigate, how far does that go? How far does the story go till we get to the truth? And to me, then you look at history. I mean, how can we say anything in history is true? It's just in a book. And we've seen all the quotes that say history is the story agreed upon by the winners. And how could that not be true? How could we expect history books to be the story of the losers? It's never going to be. It's going to be the people that are in charge, that are at the top, the Vatican, these people. And then we look at who started public school in the United States. It was the Freemasons. Freemasons started public school. They wanted us all to learn the same thing. And again, I'll just say one other thing, then I'll let you talk. But think about the fact of if me and you are rich and powerful, and we're evil people, let's just say. We're just not evil, but we just want power and money for ourselves. That's all we really care about. and we're talking about what we're going to do in the future with school, and we say, well, let's provide public education for these children, would you and I say, and also we should teach them all the truths about the world? We want them to know the truth so that they get they learn, and that they're very strong, and that they come and take our jobs and take our money and take our power? Or would you and I think to ourselves, you know what, let's teach them all something that isn't the truth, so that they cannot take our money and they cannot take our power, and that they all believe the same thing, and they're tax-paying citizens who obey the rules? Which one makes more sense if you're rich and powerful?
Well, I agree with the second option, but for me, like what's the most important thing is how government is the other stuff that the government does. Okay, I think that if people realize that all these pictures that NASA shows are fake of all these stars far away, then they'll realize that NASA's nothing more than a military operation that does nothing. The Earth doesn't have to be flat to prove that. And then I
agree with you on that.
All the stuff that or that the government does that attacks us, and Christopher Columbus is one of the lies, and obviously the Freemasons, they do run the country, and all the scripting of the sports, the propaganda, and the news.
Right.
Once people find that out, then it gets you to question things. Once I found out the scripting of the sports, that got me to question things.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. If you're me and you're doing all this research and everything is turning up showing you that it's possible that the Earth is flat, you're not finding evidence of what you were taught, that it's a ball, and you're finding evidence, then what are you saying I should do? I should not talk about the things that I'm finding that lead me to the conclusions that the Earth is flat and just keep that to myself?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you should spend more time, instead of worrying about this flat Earth thing. You should tell the people how these pictures that NASA shows of these far off stars are scripted and by the news, and talk about. I know that you got Zachary Hubbard on the.
Well, I actually totally agree with you, and I had to let you go. I've got more calls, but I do agree with you that probably is important. As I've stated before, I want a test, an example, or a good experiment, call whatever you want, like this one coming Thursday, to where I can move on to some other things, or at least and have that one piece of evidence that can't be refuted, and say, don't talk to me about the Earth being anything other than what this test shows until you can refute this evidence. And I have this issue where I'm afraid that there's too many people in the world that think like you, that is a problem, because the truth should be important, not we should do this kind of the truth and not do this one. It seems to me that that's the way they want people to think. They don't want people to ever think about the Earth being anything other than what they've taught us. And they send little minions out, and they make sure that these people ridicule you and put you down, because it's the scariest thing in the world to think, what if I'm made fun of? And people may not admit that, but it really is. People don't want to be made fun of. They don't want to be laughed at. They don't want to be considered stupid. And I see the other callers. I'm just going to wait till we get back from this break to pick you up, and we'll go through them. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe next week we'll talk about my topic that was supposed to be. It didn't happen. But I just get nervous when I hear stuff like that, or it's just a little bit frightening that so many people are willing to just. And do I have time for my story? Maybe I have time for my story. I don't know what time the break's going to come up here. Here's my story, and talk about issues that are hilarious. So my buddy, my buddies and a few of my friends that are single have always talked about Tinder and Point of Fish, or Plenty of Fish. And these are apps that you can get on your phone for single people, whatever. They talk about swiping left, swiping right. I've never downloaded either one of those apps. I had no idea how they work or what they look like. I've just heard about them, and you hear about them in the news and jokes about them, whatever. So recently I downloaded that to see what it was like. Say, who's around me, who's, to put your little selfie picture. And if you go on there and look for me, it is the one that is the best looking of anybody. That's me. So I'll tell the story when we get back. It's pretty funny. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. We'll get to your calls.
we're really just born to die. I'd rather let a baby born. Stay in school, they say. Use your tools.
The ayahuasca vine is the non-psychoactive component of the South American healing ceremony, ayahuasca. It is known for its anti-parasitic properties, both physically and spiritually, and is considered the spirit of Aya. The hemp plant has been considered a miracle healer by natives around the world for the powerful non-psychoactive component, cannabidiol, also known as CBDs. These miracle plants have been reported to aid relief with everything from inflammation, chronic pain, tremors, anxiety, heart palpitations, depression, and much more. For the first time, we have created the perfect synergy of the hemp and ayahuasca plants to bring you a perfect balance of mind, body, and soul. We call this Aya Life, and you can find it at ayalife.com. That's AYA life.com.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
We exist in the security and comfort of our worlds. Paved paths, lights, and manicured lawns give us peace of mind that our world has been tamed, and we are its master. But other worlds exist on the edge of our sight. On the edge of our awareness, the shadows move. The woods fill with the unblinking eyes of the nightmares our ancestors warned us about. Some of us have stumbled into these forgotten realms, whether on purpose or completely by surprise. I'm Brent Thomas. Join us on the Paranormal Portal Friday and Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time as we journey into the world of the paranormal phenomena.
Enter the Paranormal Portal if you dare. We are TFR.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Truth Frequency Radio.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. We got one more segment. I'm actually laughing at myself as we speak at this pretty funny story. So anyway, there's these apps, whatever. Tinder is the one that I think most people have heard of before. So it was on that app where you basically, the way it works is you put up an image of yourself and then you see images of girls, or if you're a guy, you would see, if you're a girl, you would see guys. And you swipe left if you're saying no, or swipe right if you're saying yes. And I guess when you say yes and she says yes, then it opens up a communication thing. Then you can chat. So you can't just message somebody just by looks. They have to say yes to you. You have to say yes to them. So I'm pretty picky, or I've just, that's just me. So I didn't expect to get any kind of returns because I was just being picky. And I happened to get one in the first day, I was like, oh, who's a good-looking girl? We start talking. She's talking about what she does for a living, and she writes books, and she's trying to help people, and she is caring about the deceptions in the world. So I'm like, wow, this is really crazy. What are the chances? So I was kind of saying, hey, I kind of do the same thing. I also talk to people about deception, things like that. So I'm going to read you kind of my message here. It said, so it might surprise you. Oh, no. Then I said, well, this is what I do. I have a radio show. And I said, and it might surprise you a little on some of the stuff I talk about. And doing what I do gets a ton of hate. So if you just search my name, you will probably see a ton of hate and bullshit. So all I ask is this. Can I give you an interview for you to listen to first? Maybe put in your headphones, go for a walk, just listen to the entire thing so that you have a basic understanding. If you don't agree with me after that, no hard feelings. Her response to me was, I would love to listen. I'm pretty open-minded, as long as you don't think the earth is flat. Oh. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at myself. As long as you don't think the world is flat, I will listen carefully. I got that message. I'm like, what the hell, man? Is this? I thought it was candid camera time or something. I took a screenshot and sent it to David Weiss and said, tell me this did not just happen. Oh, pretty funny. Let's go to the phones. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from?
Hey, Jeran, it's Travis.
What's up, Travis? How are you?
Not too much, man. Not too much. I'm doing well, thanks. I'm doing well. I just pulled into my stop after driving all day, so yeah, I'm about ready to crash. But
I'm getting near there.
I'm trying to recollect. Yeah, I'm trying to recollect my thoughts just to touch base with the topic that you wanted to bring up. And
well, nobody else did, so you wouldn't be alone.
So, well, no, that's okay. I want to encourage you in the same way that I would encourage anybody, whatever side of the fence they found themselves on. If it was a wife or a husband, I'm going to say the same thing to you as I would say to a woman. So I don't want it to be, misconstrued in any way. But I want to encourage you to do what's best for you, right? Because we can often make decisions based on thinking that we are responsible for the other person's happiness.
Right.
And that's just not true, because if you allow yourself to be influenced by another person's demand or requirement or request, however subtle, that you do something for their happiness, that is a form of slavery and bondage that you cannot live up to. So I just want to encourage you on that front to do what's best for you. Don't make this decision because you feel obliged to the other person somehow, like you want to do this for them or to help them in any way, because that, again, places you under their control.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, my only thought, and I mean, people know my opinion of the whole thing going into it, so it's not like I'm hiding that. But my thought is that the only thought I have really is that we all do make mistakes, number one. And be it a mistake I don't think I could have ever made or whatever, when I hear the reasons for it, and then I think of how we got together and what was important then, and did I allow those things to leave? Well, it kind of happened by both of us, right? I mean, like I said, and I think any married couple knows exactly what I'm talking about. That the flirting, the text messages, maybe the winks, the little grabs of the ass, whatever. Those things go away with time. And if you look back at that and you say, okay, yeah, they went away slowly. They weren't completely gone, but they weren't certainly as heavy as they were. But then you look at that and you say, well, am I partially responsible for that happening? I think the answer is obviously yes. Obviously, she would say the same thing. Okay, yeah, those things happened because we both fell apart or both stopped doing them. So you just have to really look at it and say, I think that the biggest question, if there was no question about me trusting her again, then I would welcome her back. That's because I think everybody makes a mistake, and I still love my wife. That's who I married. That's who I chose to stand in front of family and friends and say that to. The only real issue for me and this is probably going to be the deciding issue, is that if you can't trust somebody, then I don't think you can be in love with them. Sure, you can love somebody, you can forgive somebody all you want, but as far as being in love, being a married couple, being a team, for me, you have to have that trust. And if it's not there, which once what's been done to me has been done, I'm not sure that will ever come back, even if you are under watchful eye for 20 years. And, it's just, you will always have that little bit of a skeptical view. I mean, hey, I'm going to the store. What used to be like, okay, cool, see you when you get back, with no issues in the world, now becomes what do you mean? Well, what are you getting? Well, why are you, where are you going after? How come you were gone for 45 minutes? And I never want to be any kind of husband like that, or any kind, part of being married was that mutual trust. That I would find it very strange if I went to the store and she said, well, where are you going? What time are you getting back? Well, how come you were gone 45 minutes? You said 40 minutes. That's the kind of nagging shit that I would be like, I don't have to deal with this. I went to the store like I told you. But once somebody's done what's happened, then I feel like it would be impossible to not do those things, not say those things. And even if you didn't say them, you'd still be thinking them. And if you're thinking them, that's going to wear on you, and it's going to show in the way you treat the other person. So that's ultimately why my decision is what it's been so far.
Sure. And again, like I said, that's all on you in terms of the decision that you have to make for Jeran. So, I wholeheartly agree. A couple of things, if you still have time to talk about it real quick, and that is that you're entirely correct in terms of the trust issue. And so if you go down the road to where you're going to open yourself up to extending the relationship and continuing to work on it, that you are going to personally have to handle that battle yourself, in terms of counseling yourself not to be controlled by those fears.
Right. You're absolutely right. You're so much
when
sense. You're absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah. So when you get to the point to where if you and she sit down and she says, look, X, Y, and Z, will you please forgive me? At that moment, this is your fork in the road. If you're going to go down that road of forgiveness, then it is all on you to let it go and not bring it up, and not be a passive-aggressive manipulator who makes her feel guilty or bad or sad that she did what she did. Because it can go both ways. She can manipulate you and say, well, you used to do this when we were dating and you used to do that. That's manipulation. And you could also do the opposite, to where you say, well, where are you going? How long are you going to be there? Because that's all just a mind screw. So it's a huge responsibility of yours, to where if you say, I forgive you, it has to be complete. You have to let it go and not let your heart and mind be controlled by fear. But at the same time, your love for her is going to demonstrate to her that you trust her and that you aren't being an emotional bully trying to punish her. So it's just a huge dance, man. And I just want to encourage you again, don't do what's right for you. If you want to go down that road of forgiveness, great. If you say, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Hold on, now let me just ask you, because I like your method of thought, but I'm going to explain why I'm confused. So what is your opinion of people earning forgiveness? So you're describing a forgiveness that is handed kind of with immunity. Just, okay, well, because you're my wife and I'm going to take you back, here you're forgiven, I'm forgetting about it, and I'll never hold it against you. So what is the problem with earning forgiveness? I mean, if you go and punch your friend in the face, he might forgive you, but I'm guessing that you would need to, over time, show him that you're not going to do that again. Or, what about earning forgiveness? Are you saying that is not something that should exist in marriage, or what are you saying about that?
I don't know that the terminology for earning is the one that I would choose. I think that it's simply a relationship that expresses itself in love and mercy, and forgiveness. So when I raised my 5 children, and still am, when there's a conflict and I have one child who has offended the other child, I walk them through and I say to my daughter, okay, you did this to your brother. You need to apologize and ask for forgiveness. She does it. Now I say to the brother, your sister has now just said that she was sorry for what she did. You need to forgive her right now. Not when you're ready. You don't say, oh, I'm not ready. No, that's bullshit. You are brother and sister. You're not going to hold this over her. You're not going to pout. You're not going to go away for 5 minutes and say, whenever I'm ready, I'll forgive you. No, that's emotional abuse, and you're being passive aggressive. Knock it off. Man up. She said she's sorry. You forgive her. Boom. Done. Now, if you have, now they're children, so there's going to be repeat offenses, right? They're going to completely have to grow and mature in the way that they relate to each other. That's a given. So they're going to be repeated offenses. Now, when we're adults, I think that changes to a certain extent, so that if your wife has now gotten to the point to where she cheats on you 6 times, okay, you might need to wake up. You know what I mean? But in this instance, you know, there's one of the things you're going to have to consider is your wife is capable of this action. She's demonstrated she's capable of doing this.
Absolutely.
Right? So that is a reality as you move forward. So as much as she's going to say, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, in the back of your mind, I mean, you might want to call her on it and say, you know what, that's great, but you can't say that because you did it once.
Right. Yeah, I know.
But what I am going to say to you is, if I get to the point to where I'm ready to forgive you and we want to have this relationship again, what I'm saying when I say I forgive you is, I'm not putting a burden on you to meet some of my demands to prove to me. I just want you to love me. Just love me. And I'm going to love you, and I'm going to try to remember to write you notes. But if I don't, it doesn't mean I don't love you. You know, I might express that in a different way now than I did when we were first dating. My expression of love has changed, and that's got to be okay with you. You cannot say to me, you have to write me a love note every day. If you say that to me, then I'm not going forward with you, because I cannot live up to that standard.
Right. People who say, like, he doesn't send me flowers every day. And it's like, yeah, he doesn't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to be with that person. You run away as fast as you can.
Right. All right. Well,
because that person's got a standard that. Yeah. All right, man.
I appreciate the call, though, and I got one other call that I want to get to before the show is up. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this right from? Hello. Caller, you called back in 14 minutes ago. You're on hold then. All right. Guess not. All right. Well, we've got a few more minutes then. No more calls that I can see. So, yeah, Travis had an interesting conversation there. I think that I understand where he's coming from. It's a little bit different line of thinking than my own. You know, I look back and I think of, you know, somebody said, was Missa completely honest with you all the time? Because that's, I think, something that should be implied in a marriage. Anytime there's dishonesty going on, there's going to be problems. Obviously, I've said that a million times, you know, hating liars and everything. But when you look at the relationship, and I would notice that there would be, and there's small things, like little things that are maybe around the house or in the garage that I would say, like, when did we buy that? And they might be $5 things or $3 things or $2 things. Never like, you know, a sofa or, you know, something like that. Just little paintbrushes I didn't know we owned. Like, where did we get these? So if there was any time that somebody said, you know, hey, was Missa 100% honest with you all the time? I would say no. And I knew that sometimes there would be little things purchased that, and that's, I think every guy knows that with women, that they like to shop, they like to spend, and so there might be little paintbrushes in the garage. And I never like said, you bought these paintbrushes, how dare you? Because that's not, I don't care. You know, it's just kind of like, those are the things you like, oh, it's not a big enough deal that you even ever need to mention. So I guess the difference would be what Travis is talking about when I'm talking about earning things is that once that trust's been broken, the unsaid, maybe unwritten trust that should be there between a married couple, that I don't think it would be a problem if you said, yeah, you have to earn that back, that you know, trusting you, because I think that you are doing everything, and maybe I'm not describing it right, but just trusting a person doesn't mean like, oh, she bought those little paintbrushes, so now I don't trust her. No, that it had nothing to do with trust. It just was, well, she probably doesn't want to tell me that she bought these little paintbrushes, so she never told me. And that's not a big deal. That's, you know, fine. There's lots of things. I don't know, guys, you maybe have a hole in one of your socks and you throw it in the trash. You don't go tell your wife, hey, I throw this sock in the trash. You just throw it in the trash. So when I say there's like honesty, it doesn't mean you have to tell each other everything. Like, I threw this sock in the trash, you know, mark that down so that if you only find one, then you know the other one's in the trash. That nobody wants to be in that relationship either. But I think if you were ever going to have a relationship like I had and then try and make it work again, then I think that person has to earn a certain level of trust back. I'm not sure it can just be granted to them, because you've already granted them that. You've already given that freely. You've already put that faith in them to not smash it. So once it's been smashed, I'm not really sure that the correct method is to say, here, have it again. Because as you said, Travis, it's already been smashed. She's already done that. So I'm not sure if the smartest thing is to just hand it out again and say, okay, I'm not going to, it's emotional abuse or whatever. Well, I don't know. To me, it's kind of like, what do people say? Turnaround's fair play. No, I mean, and I don't like that idea either. You know, that's why I have so much trouble with even thinking about, and it might sound weird, but I don't want a free pass on my record, meaning I'm very happy. I was very happy being married and liked being married and stayed away from flirtations or temptations because I'm married. And I don't like the idea of all of a sudden kind of having this little get out of jail free card, which, I'm not saying that would be given to me, but I'm saying anybody who's been in that situation would kind of see what I'm saying, that it's just not a smart thing to have that in your back pocket, where you say, okay, this person is kind of coming on to me and I kind of am feeling that I kind of like it, but I got to get out of here because I'm married. And all of a sudden you think, but I don't really need to leave here. I can kind of let this go on a little bit more. I can kind of have this conversation. Okay, I can kind of go out for drinks. Before you know it, it's just trouble all over it. Because being married is a compromise. It's not easy. It's hard. And yes, we all like being flirted with. We all like the little advancements from somebody that we don't know. We all like being told, hey, you look good, whatever. And so you don't want to put yourself in those situations as a married person because you're probably not strong enough to allow that to happen over and over and over and over again. So that's kind of the difference, is that for somebody to have allowed that to happen, to just give them that permission again. Okay, yeah, here, you're forgiven, and everything. We're just going to go forward. We're going to start anew. I'm not sure if that's the right way to go. If anything, I think the right way to go, and I'm not really comparing this to my relationship, I'm just saying in relationships in general, the right way to go would be kind of like a starting over, or because think about this, when you first met your husband or wife or this person, you didn't immediately give them all the trust that they had at the end or when you were married. Obviously, that was trust that was earned over time, based on their activities and their actions and how they treated you and how they always told you the truth, and you saw that, and so you got married to them. So to think that it could go back to that point, I think is kind of ridiculous. Of course, I don't know if Travis was really saying that, but it kind of sounded like he was saying that you just need to say, okay, you're forgiven, and I won't hold it against you, and we move forward like it never happened. And I'm not sure that's the best method. I think starting over for any couple in that situation would be better. Like, okay, just like when we were at the beginning and you earned those things. You earned the trust that you had, and maybe you make them go through that process again. I don't know. That's why it's an impossible decision to make, because really it comes down to, can you be in love with somebody you don't trust? And can you really trust somebody? Can you forgive somebody? Can you actually forgive and forget? Well, maybe in words, maybe in ideas. In a perfect world, I could say, okay, you're forgiven and I won't hold it against you and everything's fine. Let's go forward. But that's not reality. Deep inside, that it's always going to be there, and it's going to be ringing in your mind. So will you treat the other person a different way because of it? I think I would. I'm not mean to Missa. Well, that's not true. I'm not mean like over the air to her, like on this show. I'm not calling her a bunch of names to her face. I'm quite mean and say quite a lot of derogatory things, but that's how I feel. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, that's all I can do is act on how I really feel. And hurt is one of them. Betrayed. Those are the words that kind of disappointed, kind of disgusted, kind of all those things. And those things are hard to win back. You wouldn't marry somebody you were disgusted with. You wouldn't marry somebody who had hurt you. You wouldn't marry somebody who had betrayed you, or, those things are things that would disqualify somebody from being your wife. So when they are your wife, it's basically just the same thing. I think maybe they still disqualify, because the same reasons that you wouldn't marry a person like that have to be the same reasons that you shouldn't stay married to a person like that. At least in my opinion. If you have a different opinion, you can email me if you want. Jeranism@yahoo.com. If you like the show, if you enjoy my work and you want to help support the channel, the radio show, I would really appreciate it. You can go to patreon.com/Jeranism, or you can donate at paypal.me/Jeran, Jeran. It would be greatly appreciated. It's not free to do the things that we do, researching for the truth and everything else. Oh, by the way, quick update before the show ends. If you're wondering the update on the Freedom of Information Act request that I made, finally on Saturday, it was so exciting. The package came. It was the hard drive. I was like, finally, I get to see this spacewalk I've been waiting for forever. I pop it into the little USB drive here, turn it on, and it's the wrong spacewalk. So it even gets funnier. I email NASA and I'm like, how the hell did this happen? You knew exactly what spacewalk I was talking about. I told you the astronauts, the date. You sent me one from 2009, different astronauts, no golfing, blah, blah, blah. And they said, okay, let me find out what happened. We'll get back to you. So then they responded again. Okay, we found out there was a mix-up. We sent you the wrong files on the wrong hard drive. Please return the hard drive to Houston via certified mail. I said, okay, where's the label? How am I going to ship it? Oh, you need to ship it yourself. I said, what? I already spent $23 to ship it certified the first time. You're paying the second. Oh, there's not a method for us to do that. And so I'm like, well, what happens if you send me the wrong file again? I got to pay again? Holy smokes. NASA is just embarrassing. Really, truthfully embarrassing at every turn. So again, having to deal with these guys and write emails back and forth. And that's all the stuff that people don't see. So yes, the $1,400 was funded by viewers, and basically two viewers who did 600 and 400. But the $1,400 was paid for by viewers, but all the work that goes into all the emails and the work of reviewing it and then uploading it, all that stuff is not paid. So obviously, anything helps if you have $1. I've got a lot of people that have signed up for $1 a month on the PayPal subscriptions, which is really cool because it's not may not seem like a lot, but when you've got 10, 11, 12 people doing that, it adds up over the month. And then also, if you do any Amazon shopping, please go to j.mp/JeranAMZ before you shop at Amazon. And I usually get 1% or 2% of most purchases. I think some things like gift cards and maybe you buy a Prime account or whatever. Those things I don't think I get any percentage, but any kind of books or housewares or shoes, or if you shop at Amazon, rather than give them all your money, how about they give me 1%? That helps a lot. And so I appreciate anybody who's doing that. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to the show. See you next week. Till then, peace.
censorship and regulation is becoming.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
The Kavanaugh nomination, the Russia probe. I'm Ann Cates. The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a public session next Monday to hear testimony from U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the woman who made allegations of sexual misconduct. Correspondent Ariane DeVogue.
Kavanaugh is familiar with this process. Not only has he been there before as a circuit court judge, he's been there for the Supreme Court. And when he worked in the White House, he worked on nominations. So you can expect him to be precise and definitive. But then you can expect her. She may not have corroboration at the time, but she's going to have this visceral, compelling story.
The president has ordered the declassification of documents and texts linked to the investigation into Russian meddling in the election and any Trump campaign ties to the Kremlin. Correspondent Evan Perez.
A lot of this has to do with the underlying explanation from the FBI as to why they believe that Carter Page was acting as an agent of a foreign power, in this case Russia. So that's what the president is going after here. That's what his allies have been selectively leaking some of this stuff.
Congressman Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, says the president is interfering with an active probe by selectively releasing materials. Florence is heading away from the Carolinas, leaving behind massive flooding. Meteorologist Jennifer Gray says the worst may be yet to come.
Flooding occurs days after the storm has passed, and that's because this is river flooding. There are 20 rivers in major flood stage, 22 in moderate, and so when all of that water now tries to drain out, it's draining into these rivers and tributaries. It's overfilling their banks, and that's what's causing all of this incredible flooding.
At least 32 have been killed by Florence in the Carolinas and Virginia. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 93 points, the S&P off 16, the Nasdaq closed down 114. I'm Ann Cates.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, your host Brent Thomas, and we are welcoming you this fine night into the beautiful land of the paranormal. And of course, unlike last night, but thank goodness tonight I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard. How you doing, brother?
Well, I was gonna say, as long as you can mute me, I think I'll be just fine. Hey, wow, what a 7 o'clock. 10 o'clock Eastern. Wow.
It's the new time. It's the time of the new era. Yeah. It's pretty cool following Frank into the show. That's been really nice. I don't know. You guys are just great at this time of night. I didn't get to see a lot of what was going on online before because just most of the time I wasn't up in my studio yet prepping for the show, so I've just been kicking back and enjoying the TFR entertainment as the night goes on. And whether you're listening to us on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, TalkStream Live, or you're checking out the live stream, which is being simulcast on YouTube, which you can see if you're not seeing it currently by going to youtube.com/paranormalportal. And we are doing this live as we speak, and have a great show ahead of us tonight just an amazing guest, full of knowledge and insights and information on so many different topics. It's just amazing, and really excited to have her on the show. But I guess before we go any further, I should probably introduce her. Without further ado, we are welcoming Shell Dion to the show, and she is the founder of Whisper Walkers and Tree Peakers, and those are amazing groups. And I'm sorry, Shell, I didn't mean to trip over my own tongue on that, but these are just amazing groups. Thank you so much for being here on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here with everybody. I know that there's a lot of people trying to tune in and find out the places to tune in, and I'm sure that they'll locate us in one way or another. But I would like to say hello to all the listeners out there and all the fans and all the support that we get. We thank you for it. A big shout out to my Tree Peakers. That's what's not listed on the banner. I'm a coach for Tree Peakers, co-created between myself and Freeman Young. We teach people actually how to go about this safely, and it's a whole curriculum. Worked with Jack Harry and the late J.C. Johnson from Cryptid Four Corners, as an honorary member there, because our work always coexisted and coexisted and worked together. And it just, if you're doing this and you're doing it right, you are connected in so many ways to so many great people out there, and it's just a shout out to everybody. So hello.
Well, and you certainly are. And I have to tell you, since doing a show myself in the paranormal, I've had the pleasure of meeting so many wonderful people in the fields, and yourself included. When you and I first talked on Skype, it was a several-hour conversation, and it just, as it went, it was like, oh my God, we still could have talked for another 22 days and never covered everything. It was just so much insight and information, and it was just fantastic. So, I really enjoyed that, and I'm really excited for you to be here to talk about these things, because I don't think they get spoken of enough. And if they are spoken of, in many cases, it's by people that really don't know what they're talking about. So this is an opportunity for people to get it from a tried and true researcher that's been in the field with the boots on the ground for years.
Thank you, and giving me all that credit there. I appreciate it. I do, because today the word researcher has grown into something. It's literally become a monster all on its own. Back when I started, we had one group on Facebook, and I think there was 200 of us. But today, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people and individual groups, and I can't even name the groups. I get added to, I'll go through every couple of months and just wipe out groups that I've been added to, because a lot of them I don't have the same, mindset as, and it's literally hundreds and hundreds of them. I don't even know how many there are. And it seems like everybody's into research or into paranormal. They all got to do their own page, and it just gets monotonous. So I've kept my own group that I stick to. We have our like pages that we stick to, and we just keep our nose to the grindstone. And really, I don't forsake or block out the whole Bigfoot community, but it's been, if I haven't been working with people that have been boots on the ground, it's really not been of interest to me to divulge myself into somebody that's seen a structure and say, oh, I'm a researcher because I'm out there walking around. That's not the same. It really does take a science mind to do this, and you're not going out there to prove anything. The best way to even approach any of this is to be disproving it, because you really are read like a book when you're around any of these beings. The intelligence is so far more incredible than what people give them credit for. But then again, it's people like myself that have worked so hard to prove that intelligence, including J.C. Johnson and a lot of other people. I mean, I couldn't even begin to just start the list, would be incredible. But the intelligence is that they are a people, an ancient people of some sort. And that's really all we know when we talk about Bigfoot. And then you uncap dogmen and wolf creatures and all the canines, and that's a whole nother topic. And we may like bleed in and out here with that as I talk, but I kind of like to keep this one focused onto the Bigfoot. And in the future, I know we talked about doing some other shows and even recording some stuff that you could just throw up when you have a cancellation or something, which is great. We have the alien aspect, we have the UFO aspect. I mean, we've had crop circles in our own backyard that were documented just so greatly, and pictures of live aliens of various types and breeds, and I don't know what you want to call them, breeds. What they call us humans, breeds. So I started this out as Bigfoot. Bigfoot was in my heart. I've been living and dealing with it since I was a 4-year-old kid, and trying to get away from it most of my life until it got to where it was just like, okay, I give in. I can't get away from you, and you're just not going to stop. And the property damages and stuff over the years that I'd been through, I just like, oh my gosh, it's a list that goes on and on. So I finally just gave in and said, okay, well, I'm finding myself in the middle of a divorce here, and I really don't have much to do with my time. And so, when I didn't have the kid, I was constantly out there in the fields, just by myself. And then I started, meeting other people, and, I just grew as an individual along with a lot of other people that grew with me. And so here in the Midwest, have handfuls of great people that I've worked with. My partner to this day, David Talaga, I would not be where I am without his eyeballs. He doesn't have ears. The poor guy, he was deprived of those, but his eyes are amazing. And a lot of what I did he's been a huge part of that. So I'm just, I kind of have to include everybody into my work. I can't accept it all on my own because I haven't walked alone.
Yeah. And that's really cool. And the other networking that you've done, I mean, you've aligned yourself with people that are really plugged into this as well. And so that stream of information it grows at such a geometric rate when you have that great core of people to lean on and to rely on and talk and exchange ideas with. And that really helps. Yeah.
Before my friends that I've met, and unfortunately I'd met them through MUFON because when you're out there in the night and you're working Bigfoot stuff, the other stuff happens. And so I thought, okay, who and where do I turn this stuff into? And I learned about MUFON. Through MUFON, I had met Farland Huff, and there that just was another spiraling thing that happened, push a domino, and he's been like my best friend my entire career of this, and guider. In the beginning, he was guiding me so much because it got to a place where I was like, okay, they're frustrating me, and I'm a little bit afraid of them. And he's like, okay, no problem, I'm coming. He used to live here, and he moved to Oklahoma, and then he said, all right, I'm coming, I'm gonna help. And so he come and he says, you know what, you've got to start looking at these things as a people. Get it in your head. Take out you don't know what the other part is. He says, forget about it. He says, and let's work at this where you actually speak to them and give them respect. And you know what? His teachings led to my teachings that led to hundreds of other teachings, and everything that we do in the field. I don't care what cryptid you are dealing with. It's all about respect. If you don't work with respect when you're dealing with this stuff, you're just going to spin your wheels. Oh, you may find some prints. You may be able to cast some stuff. You may see some structures out there. You may even hear an audio, but you will never see them.
And that's really interesting. That is really interesting that they... I think that, even in animals we've seen, and it can be clearly demonstrated in dogs, for instance, that they definitely cue into their owner's behavior, into their energy. And dogs, that are around high-strung people will be high-strung. Dogs that are around relaxed.
You're totally bringing up something I'd love to talk about. You're talking about frequency.
Right, and that's where I was getting at it with it. So that's great minds, right? But I was going to say, when you're talking about respect, it's like it's like a frequency that you walk in with, and I'm sure that these beings, these other creatures, these people can feel those things so much more than we can.
Well, yes, and I have a pup that I've had since it was a Mother's Day thing with my son years ago, and she's an old lady now. She's got gray on her face, but she's been raised in it. And she's not one of my giant breed dogs like my Great Dane or anything, but this one is so in tune to everything. Her ears are like radar dishes, and her sense when her body language changes, when that tail goes down and everything, then I know I've got something really creepy and really nasty out there in the dark. Because when you're out there in the dark, you can't see it when it's not showing its glowing eyes or something else, because there's so much out there. And when I see her back out, I know it's time for me to back out, because she literally, even though her size is, small and she's knee high, she would give her life protecting me. And so I've got to trust what my best friend in this whole world is trusting. And she's sitting right here by my side, cuddled up right now, never leaves my side. And I'll tell you what, she literally has saved me so many times, to get out of an area or whatever. And I was picking up on it too, and would look at her to see what her reaction is, because you can feel it. And when you're out there should be no talking amongst your peers. You should be in silence. You should be listening to every cue of the forest and everything that lives out there and survives out there, because it will speak back to you. And if you don't hear it and everything goes silence, you know that, okay, you need to be on high alert at that point too. And it could be something completely harmless to you once it pops itself out and you see it and it shows itself and it goes on, or, you have an encounter, whatever. The frequency between man to man is ignored. People don't realize that they're even using it. Right. You go into a crowded room and sometimes everybody's head just turns, even though the door was completely silent when you came in. And, for me, I'm so in tuned to that because I've been living off of it in that way for so many years that it's just second nature, it's secondhand. And you can pick up the vibe of, okay, who's in a bad mood here and who's really friendly there. And, your body can just take in the molecules and all the atoms of frequency that are around you. And people do it every day. I mean, you go into a gas station and the dude that walks in behind you is just, you don't even see him, but you feel him. Right. And you're standing there in line to pay, and something makes you just switch your weight and look back. And then you see this dude that looks like, a big bad biker that just had a really bad day. And so you automatically, you had the body language that responded to it. Let me see what's around me, because you felt it. But normally you may stand there in line, not care who comes in, just get my money, let me go, Yeah. So people don't get in tune with themselves. They're too plugged into social media, TV, My biggest thing when I'm teaching my students is tell them to start learning how to unplug from all of that. You go out there in the field, your smartphone, don't use it for anything that's other than what you're doing. If it's part of your application, you just got to connect to the liveness that is Mother Earth and all its inhabitants, and have the respect of, I am in your backyard, your area. When you are out there in the field, you are in their home. Now, when we come home, we come through that door and we expect that we lock that door behind us and we're safe, right?
Right. Yep.
When the reality is we don't have no walls. We don't have no roof. We don't have anything that keeps them out. I mean, they could literally just walk right through things. And I know that I'm going to come up with a division when I speak like that of the whole interdimensional quality of Bigfoot. And that's a huge thing. That causes a big thing with keyboard warriors and everything else. And you know, if you all I can say to those people is, you know what? Go out there, spend 45 years doing it, playing with it, and then come back and tell me you still want to say, oh, they're just flesh and blood and they can't do anything crazy. Sure, right, all right. You know, my brother and I as teenagers were dealing with Sasquatch, and I mean, in a hardcore way. At one point, I was running for my life. There's a story out there that everybody loves to tell, the scary stuff. That's what sells, right? The scary stuff.
Sensational.
And I do have my scary stuff, and I have my funny stuff, and I have my moments that will have just dropped you to tears, you know. But what I'm trying to say is, if people really want to experience Bigfoot and Sasquatch or whatever word you call them, for us, it's the people, because I asked them, what do you call yourselves? That was the first thing I ever spoke to them when I got to meet them face to face. It was like, what do you call yourselves? You know, it was the people. We're a people too. And when I walked away, I had said to them, of course, very thankfully, that I had met the entire clan, and I was very, very as etiquette as I could be with, you know, an indigenous people that has a whole different culture and a whole different way of thinking than we do. And I said to them, I want to thank you so much. And all I did was put my hand over my heart and just put my hand outward, because a lot of what you do ends up becoming sign language out there, let me tell you. And I said, is there anything? And he was already in my head. And my next words was there going to be, is there anything that I can do for you or your people? And before it even came out of my mouth, he looked at me and he says, just please teach your people we're a people too. And that's what's brought us here tonight, right this moment, because it's been my motto. It's what's driven me on. When the blood, sweat, tears has made me want to stop, I've continued because I made a promise to an indigenous people that I would do my best. And the best thing I could do is tell the masses that want to see Bigfoot. Of course, everybody wants to see Bigfoot. Leave it to the pros. I mean, seriously, I've landed so many portraitable pictures that are not even blurry in any way that could be used as, look, they're real, let alone all the blood and the, you know, saliva and all that kind of stuff that I send off, you know, that, you know, Melba Ketchum had a huge thing going, and it's so unfortunate what happened to her. And that brings us to where the government doesn't want people to know. Okay, why does the government not want people to know? And they will go at any length to get you to stop. Trust me. I've been up that pole very high and slid down when they get away. But the government can be a real problem. And whistleblowers, you know, they don't like us too much. But the fact of the matter is, you could look at social media and you could apply this. If you go into one of those groups that's got 200,000 people in there, and they're really kind of boring. Nobody's talking about much of anything except for the next Bigfoot, you know, festival. You throw in a picture that's absolutely amazing and just watch the piranhas come. I've done it. I've done it as an experiment. I've done it. And it's like, you know, they like to call them trolls, but I think there's more than just trolls out there. I actually think that there's actually government paid people go, oh, we got to shut this down. So let's go make a wave here, you know? And I do think that there are lurkers out there that are friending and collecting as many Bigfoot friends as they could get, and so they can watch them. And what I've gotten to where these days, I mean, if somebody comes at me and they've got 119 mutual friends, that's not the person I friend. I turn it away.
Right.
You know? And even, I mean, you get hit with all these strangers that have nothing in common. So I'll actually start pitting questions on them before I accept the friend request. What brings you my way, you know? And if they are not acknowledged into what I am or who I am and what I do, or say something that triggers a bell for me, no, they don't get friended either.
Right.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of those within, shall we say, the truther community, you know, where, you know, they just insinuate themselves into these groups and then they just start disharmony within it, you know, and it wouldn't surprise me, you know, I mean, it's disinformation. That's what they do.
Yes, and they try to discredit the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I have my private groups, and people, the only way into those groups is talk to me. You got to have a live interview with me before you're ever getting anywhere near my work.
That's great.
And I don't mean to sound terrible, but that's really how it is. And you know, my email's out there. There's ways to get in touch with me. You go to my page, you click on it. There's email.